Chapter 936. Into the kingdom of beasts as Norvin and the gray-haired old man made their way through the forest. The sound of dried leaves crunching beneath their feet filled the air. The trees around them were tall and imposing, their branches reaching up to the sky. The air was cool and crisp, and the sun shone down on them, filtering through the leaves above. Norvin's golden fur shone brilliantly in the sunlight, his massive 6-feet-tall towering body over the old man beside him. The old man was dressed in a traditional butler uniform, complete with a gray vest, white shirt, and black bow tie. His gray hair was neatly combed and slicked back, giving him a regal appearance. As they continued on their journey, the old man suddenly stopped, his keen senses detecting something in the air. Despite the cloudy afternoon, he sensed an impending storm and urged Norvin to set up camp before it hit. "Young Master Norvin, we should camp here," the old man said urgently. "I sense a storm is coming and we must take shelter before it's too late." Norvin nodded in agreement, knowing that his companion's instincts were always spot on. They quickly set up camp, securing their belongings and sheltering under a large tree. As the clouds grew darker and the wind picked up, Norvin couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. He had faced many challenges in his life, but there was something about this impending storm that made him feel on edge. Norvin and Samuel had set up camp in a small clearing of the forest, the sun filtering through the canopy of tall trees. Norvin's golden fur glistened in the light, a stark contrast to the dried leaves covering the forest floor. But despite the calm atmosphere, Norvin's mind was troubled. "Tell me, Samuel, did I make the right choice in leaving Nagaland?" Norvin asked, his gaze distant. Samuel, the gray-haired butler, sat down on the ground beside him. "Young master, I know you are hurting, but you made the right choice. You cannot be near the Dark Lord and his army." Norvin's voice was filled with regret as he spoke. "But what if my absence brings doom upon them? The Dark Lord and his army are capable of terrible destruction. You know what he did to the island of Ithalin in revenge. What if he does the same to Nagaland?" Samuel shook his head, trying to reassure Norvin. "He wouldn't do that, young master. Nagaland is the Dark Queen Gaia's homeland. He wouldn't destroy his betrothed's homeland." But Norvin couldn't shake off his feelings of guilt and responsibility. "I just hope they can hold their own against the Dark Lord's army. I wish I could be there to help." Samuel placed a comforting hand on Norvin's shoulder. "I understand, young master, but we must have faith in Yug Missanali and the other guardians. They will do everything in their power to protect Nagaland." Norvin nodded slowly, still feeling the weight of his decision. But as the sun set and the storm clouds gathered overhead, he couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. He had a feeling that his absence would have greater consequences than he had initially anticipated. "Rest now, young master. We'll arrive at the safe house by sunrise tomorrow." Samuel suggested that Norvin get some rest, but Norvin was in no mindset for sleeping. His thoughts were consumed by the fact that he had left his best friend and brother, Noah, behind in Nagaland while he fled for safety. Now, Noah was in a coma and unconscious, vulnerable to the dangers of the Dark Lord's army. Norvin felt a deep sense of guilt and regret for not being there to protect him. To make matters worse, Alicia, Noah's wife, had left for Ar to seek an alliance with the Empress to fight against the Dark Lord. With both Norvin and Alicia absent from Noah's side, Norvin felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness. He leaned his head back against the tree and closed his eyes, but his mind was racing. The thought of Noah's life hanging in the balance made it impossible for him to rest. The only thing he could do was to keep moving forward, to reach the safe house and regroup with their allies. Samuel watched over him with a sense of concern, knowing that the weight of the situation was heavy on Norvin's shoulders. He silently prayed for their safe passage to the safe house, hoping that they could reunite with their loved ones and face the challenges ahead as a united front. While Samuel was sitting by the campfire, a sudden sharp pain ripped through Samuel's gut, causing him to let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the silent forest. Norvin's thoughts were jolted out of his mind by Samuel's agonizing cry, and he leapt to his side, desperation in his eyes. "What's happening to you, Samuel?" Norvin asked urgently. But the old man could only writhe in pain and let out another anguished cry. Then, as suddenly as it began, Samuel fell silent and lost consciousness. Norvin's heart skipped a beat at the sight of the old man lying motionless on the ground. Panicked, Norvin examined Samuel's body, and his eyes widened in horror as he sensed a disruption in Samuel's soul. It was as though a part of his soul had been violently ripped away, leaving behind an emptiness that chilled Norvin to the bone. What could have caused this? Norvin muttered to himself, his mind racing. He knew that such an injury to the soul was not something that could be easily mended, and the implications of this attack weighed heavily on his mind. Who or what could have caused such a thing? And why had they targeted Samuel? As Norvin tended to Samuel's unconscious body, his mind raced with questions and fears. The journey ahead suddenly seemed much more treacherous than before, and he knew that they would have to be even more vigilant if they were to survive the dangers that lay ahead. Unknown to Norvin, the sharp pain that suddenly struck Samuel's body was no coincidence. It occurred precisely at the same moment Michael consumed Andreas' soul from Noah's body in Nagaland. Little did Norvin know that Andreas had left a small piece of his soul in Samuel's body, and when Michael destroyed that part of the soul, the remaining piece in Samuel's body was also destroyed. Fortunately, the second soul part of Andreas, which was with Celici, was not affected since the soul piece in Samuel's body was from the soul part of Andreas, which was with Noah. Norvin examined Samuel's condition and concluded that the old man needed rest to recover from the sudden pain he had experienced. Satisfied that Samuel would be okay, Norvin covered him with a warm blanket and climbed up a nearby tree to keep watch. Despite Samuel's stable condition, Norvin couldn't help but be plagued by thoughts of what had caused the sudden disruption in his body. Peering into the distant sky, he kept watch over the sleeping Samuel. The forest was eerily quiet except for the occasional rustling of leaves and twigs under the weight of nocturnal animals. The thought of the Beast King's kingdom brought a sense of both relief and apprehension to Norvin. He had heard of the powerful beast men and their imposing ruler, but had never met them himself. The idea of seeking refuge in their kingdom was daunting, but with the Dark Lord's army on his trail, it seemed like the only viable option. As Norvin sat in contemplation, his thoughts kept drifting to Noah's condition. He couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt for leaving his friend and brother behind, vulnerable to the Dark Lord's wrath. Norvin knew he had made the right choice by leaving, but the weight of responsibility weighed heavily on his shoulders. Suddenly, a twig snapped in the distance, jolting Norvin out of his thoughts. His heart raced as he peered into the darkness, trying to make out any movement or shape. Was it the Dark Lord's army hot on his trail? Or was it just a stray animal? Norvin's heart raced as he heard a rustling in the nearby bushes. He knew better than to let his guard down, especially in these treacherous times. Without hesitation, he leaped up into the nearest tree and climbed higher, scanning the area for any signs of danger. His golden fur glistened in the light, and his senses were on high alert as he listened intently for any sound that might give away an attacker's presence. His mind raced with thoughts of the Dark Lord's army and what they might be capable of. He couldn't afford to take any chances, not when so much was at stake. As he surveyed the area, his grip on the tree tightened, and he readied himself for any incoming threat. Norvin's keen eyesight caught a glimpse of movement in the distance, and he narrowed his eyes to get a better look. As the beast men drew closer, he saw that they resembled a pack of wolves. Their fur was sleek and dark, blending in with the shadows of the forest. They moved with a graceful, predatory gait that sent shivers down Norvin's spine. Despite his fear, Norvin kept his guard up and watched the group's approach carefully. He didn't know their names or identities, but he could tell that they were skilled warriors. Each of them carried a weapon and wore a fierce expression of years of training and experience. As the pack of wolf-like beastmen approached Norvin's campsite, Norvin tensed up, unsure of their intentions. The pack leader, a towering beast with thick gray fur and piercing yellow eyes, stood at a distance and bared his fangs, growling a warning. Norvin slowly raised his hands in a show of non-aggression, but kept a watchful eye on the pack. The leader spoke in a low, guttural voice, asking Norvin why he was venturing into the territory of the Beast Kingdom. Norvin hesitated, unsure of how much he should reveal. He knew that the Beast Kingdom was a powerful and feared nation, and he didn't want to reveal too much about his own mission. "I am seeking refuge," Norvin finally replied, keeping his tone neutral. "I am in need of a safe place to rest and regroup." The pack leader sniffed the air, as if testing Norvin's words for any signs of deceit. The other members of the pack circled around Norvin's campsite, their eyes glowing in the darkness. Norvin could feel his heart racing as he watched the pack warily. "Do not lie," the pack leader growled. Norvin could feel the tension in the air, and he knew that he needed to choose his words carefully. He could easily take down these wolves, but he didn't want to start a needless fight. "I'm not lying," Norvin said, holding up his hands in a peaceful gesture. "We have permission from the Beast King to enter his kingdom. We're here to seek refuge and speak with him about the Dark Lord's invasion." The wolves exchanged a look, but their leader remained unconvinced. He took a step forward, his eyes fixed on Norvin. "Prove it," he snarled. "What kind of proof do you have that the Beast King has agreed to meet with you?" Norvin hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to prove his words. But then he remembered the small medallion that the Beast King had given him as a sign of his invitation. Reaching into his pocket, Norvin pulled out the medallion and held it up for the wolves to see. "This is the proof you seek," he said. "The Beast King gave me this medallion as a sign of his invitation. We mean no harm, we just seek refuge from the Dark Lord's forces." The leader of the pack eyed the medallion warily, but after a moment, he nodded his head in acceptance. "Very well," he said. "You may pass. But be warned, monkey. We won't hesitate to strike you down if you try anything." Norvin nodded, relieved that the tense standoff was over. Once the wolves believed him, Norvin pointed at the unconscious Samuel. "He is taking a much-needed rest. Once he wakes up, we will be on our way to the safe house," said Norvin, pointing to Samuel who was sleeping peacefully. The pack leader looked at Samuel, then turned his gaze back to Norvin with a fierce stare. "Whatever you do, get to the safe house before midnight," he growled. "The Beast Kingdom has its own problems, and the last thing I want is to clean up your corpses from the ground." With that ominous warning, the pack of wolves quickly vanished into the darkness of the forest, leaving Norvin alone with his thoughts. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end as he considered the warning. What kind of problems did the Beast Kingdom have? And why did the pack leader seem so hesitant to trust him? Unbeknownst to Norvin, the Beast Kingdom was not as safe from the Dark Lord's influence as he had hoped. The kingdom had its own share of internal issues, and the Dark Lord had his own spies planted within its borders, including a number of powerful vampires. These vampires, with their keen senses and exceptional tracking abilities, made it all too easy for the Dark Lord to keep tabs on the kingdom's movements and keep his finger on the pulse of its politics. The Beast King knew that agreeing to help Norvin would make him a target of the Dark Lord's wrath. The Dark Lord believed that Norvin had killed Nightmare, and would stop at nothing to exact his revenge. In doing so, the Beast King had entered a dangerous game of cat and mouse with the Dark Lord, where one misstep could mean the end of his kingdom. Meanwhile, Selisi and her shadow clans were also plotting against the Dark Lord. They were cunning and ruthless and would do anything to stop him. The two factions had their own separate plans and strategies, but both aimed to take down the Dark Lord and put an end to his reign of terror. The stakes were high, and the outcome was uncertain. Only time would tell how the Dark Lord would face these plots against him, and whether the Beast King and Sales's plans would come to fruition. Keep your gifts coming. Shameless Author Alert. Chapter 937. Andor's future plans. Andor sat on his throne, his eyes fixated on the live feed of Nagaland playing before him. He relished every moment of Michael's suffering as Diana revealed herself to be his mother. Andor's laughter echoed through the empty halls of his castle, a sound that was almost maniacal. Suddenly, the feed began to flicker, and a bright light appeared before Andor. He was taken aback, wondering what was happening. The light grew brighter until it took on the form of a woman. Andor recognized her instantly. "Seraphine?" he asked incredulously, tilting his head in disbelief. It has been quite some time since we last met, Andor, the goddess replied with a gentle but powerful voice. Andor frowned, trying to comprehend why a goddess would suddenly appear before him. He had been trapped in this mortal realm for 6,000 years with no way to leave. He wondered what Seraphine's motives were. If you meant 6,000 years ago, then yes, it has been quite some time, Andor quipped, trying to hide his suspicion. Seraphine chuckled softly, a sound that made Andor's skin crawl. I see you still have your sense of humor, she replied. Andor leaned back on his throne, crossing his arms over his chest. Andor's eyes narrowed at the sound of Seraphine's voice, the embodiment of all that he despised about the realm of the gods. He bristled at the urgency in her words, a reminder of the ancient duty he had abandoned long ago. Despite his outward calm, Andor seethed with anger at the thought of being dragged back into the politics of the Pantheon. What do you want from me, Seraphine? Andor growled, his voice laced with venom. Seraphine's form flickered, her light growing brighter as if in a warning. You know why I'm here, she said, her voice gentle yet firm. Seraphine didn't seem to take offense at Andor's tone, continuing with a sense of urgency. The third seal has been broken, Andor. Dagon is planning to ascend to our realm once again with his army of Hellwalkers. Andor remained unmoved, his anger towards the Dark Lord overshadowing any sense of duty to the realm of gods. I'm pretty sure Morrigan will take care of that, he snickered, showing his disdain for the god of war. The last time I checked, it was your duty to prevent Dagon from ascending to the realm of gods, Seraphine reminded him. Andor's voice dripped with venom as he retorted, well, the last time I checked, I can't even leave this damn castle. So if you have a way to break the seal and let me out of here, I might go deal with Dagon out of the goodness in my heart. He knew he was treading a dangerous line, for if he showed too much hatred towards his own kind, the gods might find a way to keep him in the mortal realm for longer. But he couldn't hide his anger and hatred towards the realm of gods anymore, not when he had been trapped in the mortal realm for 6,000 years. Seraphine looked at him with a sense of disappointment and sadness. Your hatred blinds you, Andor. You were once a noble and just god, but your anger towards the Dark Lord has consumed you and made you forget your duty to our realm. You are needed in the war against Dagon. But first, you must let go of your anger and remember who you truly are. Andor's face twisted with rage. You know nothing of what I have endured, Seraphine. You and the other gods have no right to judge me. My hatred is not what blinded me, Seraphine. It was my own kind that forgot about me. None of you bothered to check on me until you want something from me. Tell me, goddess of all information, how many times have you checked on me? None. Andor's voice grew louder as he continued. For a goddess of information, you seem to have no clue that I am trapped in this damn castle. So tell me, how am I supposed to deal with Dagon? And why would I want to help you even if I could? The tension in the room was palpable as Seraphine regarded Andor with a mix of sadness and frustration. We are not blind to your plight, Andor. We have not forgotten you. But you must remember that our realm is in danger. We need your help and are willing to do what we can to assist you in leaving this castle. Andor was taken aback by the sudden offer of help. His anger and hatred for the gods had blinded him to any possibility of assistance from them. But deep down, he was still desperate to leave the mortal realm any way he could, even if it meant working with his own kind whom he despised. He suppressed his rage and considered the offer for a moment. Sensing that Andor was not going to interrupt her, Seraphine took the chance to continue speaking. Seraphine leaned forward, her voice low and urgent. Andor, listen to me. Dagon cannot escape the hell without first breaking several powerful artifacts that keep him imprisoned there. He cannot destroy them himself, so he is sending his Hellwalkers to do it. We need the Sky Hall to fight against these Hellwalkers and protect the artifacts. If they are destroyed, nothing will stop him from ascending to our realm. Andor listened to Seraphine intently, weighing his options as he considered her proposal. Although he still harbored a deep-seated anger towards his fellow gods, he knew that he was also desperate to leave the mortal realm, and the opportunity to do so might be worth considering. Let us assume for a moment that I am willing to assist you, he said slowly, eyeing Seraphine with suspicion. But what makes you think that the Sky Hall alone will be enough to stop Dagon and his army of Hell Walkers? Breaking things is always easier than preventing them from being broken, and even if I were to agree to send the Sky Hall to this fight, Dagon would eventually find a way to break the artifacts without any gods fighting against him. Seraphine nodded gravely. We are aware of that. That is why we need the Sky Hall to delay Dagon as long as possible until the Dark Lord can break 3 more seals. Once that happens, we can send a god from the Pantheon to the mortal realm and engage in battle with Dagon's army directly. Andor's frustration was palpable as he slammed his hand on the armrest of his throne. So, you're telling me that you could send a god to the mortal realm but not bring me back? This is outrageous, he exclaimed. Seraphine's expression softened slightly. I understand your anger, Andor, but the rules of our realm are not always fair. Andor scoffed. Rules? The Dark Lord doesn't follow any rules. He has already caused so much destruction, and yet the Pantheon still underestimates him. Dagon may be a threat, but he's nothing compared to the Dark Lord. Andor's eyes blazed with fury as he confronted Seraphine. Why does the Pantheon continue to underestimate the Dark Lord? He is a much greater threat than Dagon could ever be. Why not send a god to the mortal realm to take him out? Seraphine's expression was grave as she responded. Because we are still here, Andor. The Dark Lord is not. The previous Dark Lord was forced to reset the mortal universe as a last resort. Even at his peak, he only managed to kill some weak gods. Dagon, on the other hand, could threaten the very existence of the Pantheon itself. Andor seethed with anger, knowing that his own hatred for the Dark Lord was consuming him, blinding him to the true danger that lay ahead. Despite his loathing for the gods, he knew that he needed their help to escape the mortal realm. But at what cost? Would he be forced to fight alongside those he despised to save the very realm he had grown to hate? Seraphine's voice rang out with a tinge of disappointment and frustration. Do not forget your true purpose, Andor. You were sent to the mortal realm to eliminate the threat that Dagon poses to our world, she reminded him. 6,000 years ago, the Pantheon had tasked Andor with the mission to end Dagon's existence. However, Andor's stubbornness and hatred towards the Dark Lord had clouded his judgment, and he ended up fighting the wrong enemy. His reckless actions had nearly cost him his life, and Andor's anger had only grown since then, causing him to forget his original mission. Seraphine's voice was firm and determined as she made her offer to Andor. If you help the Pantheon defeat Dagon and the other fallen gods, I will personally make sure that the Dark Lord pays for what he did to you. Whatever the cost, I will find a way to bring you out of the mortal realm and restore you to your rightful place among the gods. Her words hung in the air, a tantalizing promise of revenge and redemption. Andor's eyes gleamed with a sudden realization that the gods' offer was too good to refuse. Despite his loathing towards the gods, he had no doubt in their power and authority. Their word was as good as gold, and if they promised him anything, they would keep it no matter the cost. Andor knew that dealing with the Dark Lord would require a lot of planning, strategy, and cunning. However, with the Pantheon's help, he could deal with the Dark Lord directly, using brute strength and force, something that he was exceptionally skilled at. Andor expressed his concern to Seraphine. If I commit the Sky Hall's resources to fight against Dagon and his army, that would leave the Dark Lord unchecked. How can we be sure that it's the best course of action? Seraphine chuckled at Andor's words. You underestimate the power of the goddess of information, Andor. I know all that happens in the mortal realm, including your contingency plans. The Shadow Clan is one of them, is it not? And even if you had no plans, letting the Dark Lord run rampant will work in our favor. The more chaos he causes, the easier it will be for us to sway the Pantheon to end his existence. Andor was taken aback by Seraphine's knowledge. He had always been careful to keep his plans hidden from the gods, but he should have known better than to think he could keep secrets from the goddess of information. He sighed, realizing that he had no choice but to agree to Seraphine's proposal. If it meant he could finally exact his revenge on the Dark Lord, He was willing to sacrifice the Sky Hall's resources and let the Dark Lord run rampant in the mortal realm. Fine, I'll help you. But remember, Seraphine, I'm doing this for my own reasons, not for the realm of gods, Andor said, his voice laced with bitterness and anger. Seraphine nodded, her expression solemn. I understand, Andor, but we need your help now more than ever. Dagon poses a threat to our entire world, and we cannot face him alone. Andor clenched his fists, his rage boiling inside him. He knew that Seraphine was right, but he couldn't help feeling resentful toward the gods. They had abandoned him to the mortal realm for 6,000 years, and now they expected him to come to their aid. But despite his anger, he knew that he couldn't let his personal grudges get in the way of what needed to be done. If he didn't help the Pantheon, they would all be doomed. As the conversation seemed to be coming to an end, Seraphine's voice became more serious. And before we part ways, there is something else you should know, Andor, she said, her tone weighted with importance. Andor raised an eyebrow in curiosity. He knew that whatever Seraphine was about to tell him, it must be something of great importance. There is a fallen god who has taken refuge in the mortal realm and has turned himself into a vampire, Seraphine revealed, her voice filled with urgency. Andor's eyes widened at Seraphine's revelation. A fallen god who turned himself into a vampire? What's his name? He demanded. Ingram, Seraphine replied calmly. He's one of the elder vampires at the table. Andor's mind raced as he processed this new information. A fallen god aiding Dagon, and one who had turned himself into a vampire no less. Andor felt a twinge of amusement at the thought of a fallen god turning himself into an elder vampire. He knew that the fallen gods were capable of anything, but the idea of one of them becoming a vampire was quite unexpected. He couldn't help but picture the fallen god Ingram sitting at a table, dressed in black leather and sipping on a glass of blood, surrounded by other vampires. The irony of it all made Andor chuckle, despite the gravity of the situation. Seraphine couldn't help but feel a sense of respect for Andor. Despite being stripped of his power and stuck in the castle for so long, he still possessed a sharp mind and cunning intellect that made him one of the most powerful gods in their world. She knew that underestimating him would be a grave mistake, as he was capable of outmaneuvering even the most cunning of opponents. It was this resilience and determination that made Seraphine realize that Andor was not to be taken lightly, and that he could prove to be a valuable ally in the fight against Dagon and the other fallen gods. Chapter 938. A weapon of the gods. As Seraphine vanished before his eyes, Andor snapped his fingers, summoning a shimmering golden orb before him. With practiced ease, he placed his hands on either side of the orb, causing it to flicker and hum to life. Within seconds, the figures of several of his most trusted underlings materialized within the orb, each one bowing low in reverence to their lord. Despite being stripped of his power and confined to the castle, Andor was still one of the most cunning and powerful gods in his world, with a network of loyal followers at his command. In the vast halls of Sky Hall, only a handful of individuals were privy to Andor's existence. These few figures, who controlled every aspect of the Sky Hall, served as Andor's eyes and ears in the mortal realm. To the outside world, the Holy Maiden was the public face of the Sky Hall and its leader, but in reality, it was Andor who held the reins of power. Andor and a select group of gods had found the Sky Hall thousands of years ago. Now, only a select few knew about its existence and Andor's involvement in its affairs. My lord, the figures intoned in unison, their voices laced with deference and awe. Andor had agreed to send the Sky Hall and its resources to fight Dagon and his army of Hellwalkers, but he had no intention of leaving the Dark Lord completely unchecked. Before he dispatched the Sky Hall to battle, he had one last task for them, a mission that would ensure the Dark Lord was kept in check while he was away. Take the Celestial Sword and deal with the Dark Lord, Andor ordered his underlings with cool detachment. The Celestial Cannon was one of the most powerful weapons in existence, capable of destroying entire armies with a single shot. Only a select few in the Sky Hall knew of its existence, and Andor trusted them implicitly to use it wisely. The figures in the orb immediately bowed their heads in respect and obedience to Andor, their lord and master. Without hesitation, they replied in unison, "As you command, my lord." Their unwavering loyalty to Andor was a testament to the power he held over them and the Sky Hall. Andor knew that he could rely on them to carry out his orders, no matter how dangerous or difficult the task may be. With a wicked smile, Andor gave a final command to his subordinates in the Sky Hall. "Make sure Cobra receives my gift," he said, his tone laced with a hint of malice. Andor was a man of focus and commitment, and sheer will. Andor's unyielding focus and unwavering commitment were the stuff of legends in the realm of gods. Once he set his sights on a task, nothing could divert his attention or weaken his resolve until he achieved his goal. His sheer will was unmatched by any other deity in the pantheon, and it was this tenacity that had allowed him to survive in the mortal realm for 6,000 years. Andor knew that he couldn't afford to divert his attention from the looming threat of Dagon and his army. However, he couldn't ignore the atrocities committed by the Dark Lord in his absence. Andor had already put his Plan B into motion, ensuring that the Dark Lord wouldn't have an easy time while he was away. With a devilish grin, he ordered his trusted followers in the Sky Hall to deliver a special gift to Cobra, one of the Sky Hall's most efficient assets. After consuming Andreas' soul, Michael found himself feeling empty and restless. The loss of Nightmare weighed heavily on his mind, and he struggled to come to terms with the fact that his friend was gone forever. As he thought about Nightmare, Michael couldn't help but feel a sense of anger toward the system. Every time he needed it, the system would malfunction, leaving him to fend for himself. Despite Diana's revelation that she was his mother, Michael felt nothing towards her and her family. They had lived pretending he was dead all these years, and now that the truth was out, it didn't change the fact that they were strangers to him. Michael didn't even bother to spare them a second glance as he turned around to leave Nagaland. Gaia approached Michael with a sense of empathy and understanding. As she floated towards him, she rested her gentle hands on his shoulders, offering a consoling touch to ease his pain. She could feel the weight of his sorrow, heavier than even her own, for the loss of his dear friend Nightmare. But there was something more that added to his agony, something that made her heart ache even more. She knew that Michael was now burdened with the knowledge that his greatest adversary, the one he was fated to fight, was none other than his own brother. The revelation had shattered his world, leaving him to grapple with an overwhelming mix of emotions that were difficult to comprehend. Gaia could only imagine the turmoil he was going through and wished there was something more she could do to comfort him. As Michael was preparing to depart from Nagaland, a sense of unease washed over him, causing every hair on his body to stand on end. The storm that had been raging around the island intensified, casting ominous darkness over the already bleak landscape. Suddenly, a massive shadow loomed over them, and Michael's instincts went into overdrive. He looked up, and his eyes widened in shock as he beheld an enormous ship that resembled a sword. The vessel was gargantuan, dwarfing even the island of Nagaland itself. It was easily the largest ship Michael had ever seen, and it left him and everyone else who witnessed it stunned with disbelief. The sheer size and scale of the ship were awe-inspiring, and it was a terrifying sight to behold. The rogue cultivators, news reporters, and soldiers were stunned when they saw the sudden appearance of the massive sword-shaped ship. Some of them gasped in disbelief, while others were frozen in fear. "What the hell is that?" one of the rogue cultivators muttered, staring up at the imposing ship. "Is that a ship or a floating city?" asked a news reporter, frantically trying to capture footage of the ship with his camera. The soldiers on the ground were equally shocked. "This is unprecedented. We have no record of any ship this size," said one of the commanding officers. As the ship descended closer to the island, its sheer size became more apparent. It was easily 3 times larger than the island of Nagaland and appeared to be made of a dark, metallic material. The ship had intricate designs etched onto its surface, giving it an ancient and ominous appearance. "Holy shit, what is that thing?" one of the soldiers muttered under his breath. "I've never seen anything like it," exclaimed a news reporter, her voice trembling with fear. Another rogue cultivator looked up at the ship in disbelief. "This can't be good. What the fuck is happening?" The ship cast an ominous shadow over the island, making it seem as if the end of the world had come. People ran in every direction, screaming and shouting in fear. "We're all gonna die," yelled a soldier as he fell to his knees, clutching his head in despair. "Get the fuck out of here. We need to warn everyone." Another rogue cultivator shouted, trying to rally the others. The ship was massive, larger than anything they had ever seen before. It looked like a sword, but the size was beyond comprehension. The sight of it alone made everyone feel helpless and small. Suddenly, the airship's engines roared to life, its power building as it hummed with energy. Slowly, the tip of the sword-shaped vessel began to emit an eerie purple glow, casting an ominous hue over the island below. The air crackled with electricity, bolts of lightning dancing across the ship's hull. The wind around the ship picked up, causing the trees to bend and sway as if a great storm was approaching. Drowning out all other noise on the island, the sound of the engines grew louder and louder. It became clear that this was no ordinary ship, and the inhabitants of Nagaland watched in awe and fear as it prepared for whatever lay ahead. In an instant, the ship unleashed a devastating beam of energy that barreled straight toward Michael and Gaia, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. The sheer force of the blast melted the dark storm clouds that had shrouded Nagaland, revealing the true horror of the situation. Michael tried to react, but a strange energy radiating from the ship slowed down his reflexes and prevented him from using a teleportation scroll. Panic set in as he realized the danger they were in, and Gaia's grip on his shoulder tightened in fear. As the energy beam shot through the air, Rowena's heart skipped a beat as she saw Michael and Gaia in its path. Without a second thought, she launched herself from the rooftop, leaving a powerful shockwave on the ground as she flew at breakneck speed toward Michael. Her mind raced with a jumble of thoughts and emotions, and she knew that she had to act fast. As she flew, she thought of the ancient text she had stumbled upon in the forbidden section of the Sky Hall Library, a text that spoke of a ship beyond mortal comprehension. Could this be it? Was it the ship that the text had warned about? Her heart pounding, Rowena flew towards Michael, feeling the weird energy from the ship slowing down her reflexes. She had to act fast if she was going to save him. Despite the fact that Dean refused to forgive and forget their mother for abandoning him as a child, Rowena couldn't deny that he was still her little brother and that blood was thicker than water. She knew that Dean was misunderstood by the world and that the chaos and destruction he caused had earned him the label of evil. But to her, he was still her little brother. To Rowena, family came first, even above her loyalty to the Sky Hall or her own life. She felt a fierce protectiveness toward both Noah, whom she had watched grow up, and Dean, whom she had only recently learned was her brother. She knew Dean might never understand her loyalty, but she was willing to risk everything to protect him and their family. Driven by her fierce protectiveness towards her family, Rowena knew that she had to do something to save Michael. With no other options in sight, she realized that she had to use the Forbidden Stone, an ancient artifact that had been hidden away in the depths of the Sky Hall's forbidden library for centuries. The energy from the ship had slowed Michael's reflexes, making him unable to use a teleportation scroll, and it was only a matter of time before the beam hit him. Rowena knew that she had to act fast if she wanted to save him. She focused all her energy and determination, racing towards Michael with lightning speed, leaving a trail of crackling energy in her wake. As she drew near, she took out the Forbidden Stone, knowing that using it was a risk that could have dire consequences. But for Rowena, the safety of her family was worth any risk. She pressed the stone to Michael's forehead, and in that moment, a powerful energy surge enveloped them both, transporting them away from the ship's deadly beam. As Michael and Gaia vanished from the path of the beam, Rowena stayed behind to face the full force of the energy blast. The beam hit her squarely, and she felt an intense heat spread through her body. The impact sent her flying through the air, her body tumbling end over end. Diana and Sabrina watched in horror as Rowena was struck, their screams mixing with the sound of the explosion. Diana and Sabrina shouted in terror as they saw Rowena get hit. The sound of the beam hitting Rowena was deafening, and for a moment everything seemed to stand still. When the realization of what had just happened sunk in, The onlookers were left stunned and unsure of how to react. Did she just sacrifice herself to save him? One rogue cultivator whispered, his voice barely audible over the ringing in his ears. But he's the Dark Lord, another said in disbelief. Why would she risk her life for him? Rowena's love for her siblings knew no bounds, and she was always there for them no matter what. She had always been the one to stand up for them and protect them from harm. Her actions in risking her life to save the Dark Lord were a testament to this love and devotion. Even though he was the enemy of many, Rowena couldn't turn her back on him because he was still family. I don't know, a news reporter replied, still in shock from the sudden turn of events. But it looks like she did it without a second thought. The soldiers who had been standing nearby remained silent, unsure of how to process what they had just witnessed. The group stood there in silence as the enormity of what had just happened began to sink in. Rowena had risked her life to save the Dark Lord, a man who was seen by many as the embodiment of evil. And yet, at that moment, all of that seemed to fade away, replaced by the simple fact that one person had saved another. As the dust and debris settled, it became clear that Rowena was no longer in sight. Whether she survived the attack or not remained a mystery. Keep the gifts coming. Chapter 939. In the realm of hell, as Michael and Gaia materialized in the new location, he could feel his skin crawl as he took in the barren, desolate landscape before him. It looked like the fire realm he had been to before, but this place was much darker and more ominous. The air was thick with the stench of sulfur, ash, and decay, and the ground beneath his feet was jagged and treacherous. When he looked around, Michael could see that the sky was a foreboding black, with swirling clouds and bolts of lightning flashing in every direction. There was no sun or moon, no natural light to guide his way. Instead, the only illumination came from the flickering flames that rose up from the molten lava rivers that ran through the realm. The flames cast eerie shadows across the desolate landscape, and Michael could feel the heat from the lava even at this distance. The place seemed like the embodiment of evil and death, and Michael could feel it in his bones. The screams of the damned could be heard echoing through the darkness, and he could sense the presence of malevolent beings lurking in the shadows, eager to inflict pain and suffering on anyone who dared to enter this realm. It was a place of eternal suffering, where the tormented souls were trapped forever, unable to find peace or rest. Gaia's voice broke through the silence that surrounded them, cutting through the thick atmosphere like a knife. "Where are we?" she asked Michael, her eyes scanning the barren, desolate landscape. Despite the absence of any visible life forms, the air was thick with the sounds of screams and cries, like a chorus of agony that echoed through the air. Michael's eyes darted around, taking in the surroundings. He could feel the death and evil in the air, pressing down on him like a heavy weight. His environment scanning showed no signs of life forms, but his instincts told him otherwise. He knew they needed to find a higher vantage point to figure out where they were and where they needed to go. He turned his gaze toward the mountain in the distance, an ominous and foreboding sight that rose up from the bleak landscape. It was a volcanic mountain, with jagged edges and peaks that looked as if some great force had torn them apart. The lava rivers that ran through the realm flowed toward the mountain, feeding the fiery pit at its center. The air was thick with the stench of sulfur and ash, and the only light came from the flickering flames that rose up from the molten lava. "I'm not sure where we are, but we need to get to that mountain. It might give us a better view of our surroundings." When Michael took a step toward the ominous volcanic mountain, Gaia pulled him back by his sleeves, causing him to turn around and face her. Her face was etched with concern as she spoke. "I don't think I can use my cultivation here. Something's interrupting my energy flow." Sensing her distress, Michael immediately suggested, "Try the Olympus." Gaia nodded in agreement and attempted to access her space ring to retrieve some arch energy crystals. However, to her surprise, she found that she couldn't even access her space ring. It was as if something in this strange realm was preventing her from using her cultivation power and accessing her resources. As Michael watched Gaia struggle to retrieve the arch energy crystals, he realized that this strange realm had rendered her powerless. In contrast to Gaia, he felt stronger in this strange realm. Despite the system being offline, Michael was able to access the storage and retrieve the necessary weapons for their journey through the strange realm. He handed over a sword sheath, a sword, a quiver full of arrows, and a bow to Gaia, who quickly strapped them to her armor. As Gaia prepared for their journey, Michael retrieved a sparkling arch energy crystal and handed it to her. "Try this," he said, hoping that it would somehow help her use her cultivation energy in this strange realm. Gaia nodded and inserted the crystal into the Olympus on her wrist. The device absorbed the energy from the crystal, but Gaia felt no energy coursing through her veins. Disappointed, she shook her head. "It's the same," she said, realizing that something in this realm was preventing her from using her cultivation energy. Without a word, Michael's strong arm encircled Gaia's waist and pulled her close to him. As they took to the air, Gaia felt a strange mix of emotions. She wanted to ask Michael how he was feeling, after learning that Diana was his mother and Noah was his brother. But she couldn't find the words, and Michael's expression was unreadable, cold, and distant. As they soared toward the mountain, the desolation of the realm was all around them. Gaia could feel the weight of despair and darkness pressing down on her. But she was grateful for Michael's presence, which gave her a sense of security and comfort. Finally, they landed atop the mountain, and the sight that greeted them left them both stunned. In the distance, they could see a lone castle rising up from the horizon. Its black walls and twisted spires seemed to mock the very concept of hope. As Gaia stood on top of the mountain and gazed at the horizon, she saw nothing but desolation and darkness. The landscape was barren, devoid of any signs of life, and covered in a thick layer of ash and dust. The air was thick with the stench of sulfur and decay, and the sound of screams and cries echoed through the darkness, creating an eerie and unsettling atmosphere. But her attention was drawn to the lone castle in the distance. It was massive, foreboding, and surrounded by jagged peaks and a moat of boiling lava. The castle was built with black stones, and the gates were adorned with twisted demonic faces, exuding an ominous and malevolent aura. Gaia couldn't help but feel a shiver run down her spine as she gazed upon the castle. She knew that whatever lay within its walls was nothing but pain and torment, a place of eternal darkness and despair. She had never felt such darkness and malevolence before, and the thought of entering the castle sent a chill down her spine. Her heart sank at the sight of the castle. She knew that whatever lay within those walls would be unspeakably evil and dangerous. But with Michael by her side, she felt a sense of determination and courage. Michael typically took a methodical approach when exploring unknown territories, often surveying the area before making a move. However, his anger overpowered his usual caution, and he had no patience for strategizing. As a result, he had no intention of lingering on top of the mountain for an extended period of time. Driven by rage and determination, Michael's sole focus was on finding a way out of this accursed realm and exacting revenge on the Great Eight clan and everyone who stood against him. As the Dark Lord, he was determined to show them the extent of his power and what would happen to those who dared to cross him. He was done playing it safe and wanted nothing more than to charge in and take out anyone who dared cross him. As Michael was about to move forward towards the castle, Gaia's grip on his hand brought him to a sudden halt. His eyes remained fixed on the castle in the distance, his mind filled with a burning desire to wreak havoc on those who had caused him and his loved ones so much pain. But Gaia's soft voice brought him back to reality. "Michael, we need to talk," she said with a gentle yet firm tone, hoping to reach him through the thick fog of his anger and pain. Michael didn't turn around, his gaze still locked onto the castle in the distance. But her words managed to penetrate his mind, if only for a moment. Gaia took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she knew would be a difficult conversation. "Please, whatever is inside that fucked-up-looking castle." She pointed towards the ominous castle in the distance. "It can wait. We need to take a moment to regroup to figure out our next move." Gaia's voice was soft and gentle, but it carried a weight of emotion that Michael could feel. He slowly turned to face her, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment, they stood there in silence, the only sound the howling wind that whipped around them. Gaia reached out and gently cupped Michael's face, guiding his gaze toward her. As she looked into his eyes, she could see the pain and anger simmering within him. With a deep breath, she leaned in and touched her forehead to his, hoping to find some way to calm him down. But as soon as their foreheads touched, a wave of grief washed over her. The memory of losing her beloved little lizard, Nightmare, came rushing back, and tears started streaming down her cheeks. She tried to hold back the sobs that threatened to escape her, but the pain was too much to bear. Feeling her body shake with emotion, Michael wrapped his arms around her and held her close, offering comfort in the only way he knew how. Together, they stood on the mountain, holding on to each other as they grieved for what they had lost and braced themselves for what lay ahead. As Michael thought about Diana being his mother, a wave of emotions hit him like a ton of bricks. Anger, sadness, and betrayal all churned inside him, making it difficult for him to think straight. He couldn't believe that the woman who had abandoned him and left him to fend for himself was his own mother. Felt like a cruel joke. He wondered how Diana could have raised Noah, her other son, with all her love and care while he had to struggle and grow up as an orphan. The thought of it made his blood boil, and he couldn't shake off the feeling of being betrayed. But as he stood there, his heart heavy with these emotions, he was also consumed by another pain, the loss of his beloved dragon, Nightmare. The memories of their time together flashed through his mind, and he felt an overwhelming sense of grief and regret. He had never expected to lose Nightmare so soon, and the pain was almost too much to bear. Torn between these two sources of pain, Michael struggled to find a way to move forward. Michael stood there in silence, his eyes focused on the ground. His emotions were all over the place: anger, sadness, and a sense of betrayal. "How could she do this to me?" he muttered to himself. "How could she abandon me like that?" Gaia could sense the pain in his voice and leaned in closer to him. "I know it hurts, Michael," she said softly, "but try to see things from her perspective. Maybe there's more to the story than we know. The Sky Hall has always been capable of manipulating people and situations to their advantage. Maybe there's more to the forbidden spell they cast to send you to Earth when you were born. It's possible that Diana had no choice but to leave you behind." Michael's voice was barely audible as he spoke. "But don't you remember what Eladir said? In order for that forbidden spell to work, my mother had to sever her maternal bond with me willingly. It wouldn't have worked otherwise." He paused for a moment, the pain of abandonment still raw and fresh. Despite the pain of losing Nightmare still weighing heavily on her heart, Gaia knew that her duty as Michael's partner was to comfort him and ease his pain. She pushed aside her own grief and focused solely on tending to Michael's needs, for that was what true love meant to her. At that moment, Michael's pain became her top priority, and she was determined to be there for him in any way she could. Even though Gaia loved Michael deeply and wanted to help him heal from the pain of being abandoned by his mother, she also wanted to approach the situation objectively. She didn't want to fuel his anger by blindly supporting his emotions. Gaia knew that there had to be a reason for Diana's actions, and she wanted Michael to consider the possibility that there was more to the story. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was a bigger picture that they were missing. Gaia wanted to understand Diana's perspective and help Michael see things from a different angle. "Michael, I know this is difficult for you, but please try to see things from your mother's perspective," she said, her voice filled with empathy. "Think about it. The Sky Hall was afraid of the prophecy and the chaos it could bring. Diana had to make a difficult decision, one that no mother should have to make. The Sky Hall, with all its power and influence, would have done anything to prevent that from happening. Even if Diana had wanted to keep you, they would have threatened her family and their safety. So what would you have done if you were in her position? Would you have risked the lives of your entire family to save one child? Or would you have sacrificed one child to save your family?" She paused for a moment to let her words sink in. "I'm not saying what she did was right or fair, but sometimes people are put in impossible situations and have to make tough choices. It doesn't mean they don't love you or care about you. It just means they had to do what they thought was best in a difficult situation." Gaia looked at Michael with compassion, hoping her words would help ease his pain and anger toward his mother. "The damage has already been done, Gaia. It's not that easy to forgive and forget. especially when it comes to something as big as this. I don't think I can suddenly accept her as my mother just because she had no choice. It's like a broken mirror that can never be fixed, and even if we did try to fix it, the cracks would always be there," Michael said, his voice laced with pain and bitterness. Chapter 940 Hell Walkers. After their discussion about Diana, the conversation gradually shifted to the loss of their beloved dragon, Nightmare. Both of them were struggling to come to terms with his death, and the pain was still raw and intense. Gaia started talking about the times they spent with Nightmare, how he was always there for them, and how he had been more than just a dragon. "I miss Nightmare, Michael," she said softly, her voice heavy with sorrow. "I can't believe he's gone. I miss him too. It's like a part of me is missing," Michael continued. "He was more than just a dragon, Gaia. He was my companion, my friend, my family. Losing him is like losing a part of my soul." Gaia nodded in agreement, her eyes glistening with tears. "I keep thinking about all the times we spent with him, the way he would always fly around us, the warmth of his scales under our fingertips." Michael closed his eyes, trying to hold back the tears. "I know, Gaia. He was more than just a dragon to us. He was family." They both fell silent, lost in their own thoughts and memories of Nightmare. The pain of his loss was still fresh, and they couldn't come to terms with the fact that he was gone forever. Dragons and Nagas were not known to be fond of each other's kind. They had a long history of hatred and conflicts. However, Gaia and Nightmare's relationship was different. Gaia had known Nightmare since he was a little baby dragon, and over time, they formed a bond that was unbreakable. At first, Gaia didn't take a liking to the dragon, but as time went by, she began to see him in a different light. As a young dragon, Nightmare loved to play, and Gaia found herself in the midst of his antics more often than not. She remembered one particular day when they were having a playful fight in a field. She was in her Nagini form, slithering around while Nightmare was flying around her, playfully trying to catch her tail. But then Nightmare had a mischievous idea. He flew down low, and with a swift movement, he snatched Gaia's tail in his mouth and started dragging her along the ground. Gaia let out a yelp of surprise but soon realized that Nightmare was just playing with her. Despite their species' inherent hatred towards each other, Gaia and Nightmare formed an unlikely bond. Gaia had known him since he was just a little baby dragon, and over time they had become close. She remembered how he used to follow her around and how he would always nudge her for attention. Thinking back on that memory brought tears to Gaia's eyes. She had lost a dear friend and companion, which deeply hurt her. As they mourned the loss of their beloved dragon, a gust of cold wind swept through the desolate landscape, causing Michael to tense up. He had a feeling that they were not alone in this dark realm. His eyes narrowed in suspicion as he scanned the surroundings, looking for any signs of danger. Gaia noticed the sudden shift in Michael's expression and knew that something was amiss. She quickly reached for her bow, nocked an arrow, and aimed it at the source of the disturbance. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as she prepared to unleash a deadly shot. The eerie silence was broken by the sound of faint footsteps approaching them. Michael and Gaia heard a low growl from the darkness as the footsteps grew closer. They braced themselves for an attack. When Gaia turned to face the source of the gust, she heard a low growl that sent shivers down his spine. Suddenly, the ground cracked open and a hand emerged, dripping with a dark, putrid slime. The stench was unbearable, and she had to cover his nose to avoid retching. The hand gripped the edge of the crack and pulled up a figure that was beyond horrific. The figure was covered in the same dark pus that dripped from its hands, oozing out of every orifice in its body. Its eyes glowed red with a fierce intensity, and its sharp teeth were bared in a menacing snarl. Its skin was stretched taut over its skeletal frame, and it moved with a strange, unnatural grace. Michael could feel his heart racing as he took a step back, but Gaia stood her ground, her arrow pointed directly at the creature. The figure let out a chilling, otherworldly laugh that made the hair on the back of Michael's neck stand on end. "What are you?" demanded Gaia, her voice steady and unwavering. The figure merely laughed again, its voice sounding like 1,000 tortured souls screaming in unison. It took a step forward, and Michael could feel the air around them grow colder with each passing moment. This was no ordinary creature, Michael realized. It was a being of pure evil, sent to torment them in this godforsaken realm. He tightened his grip on his sword, ready to defend himself and Gaia at any cost. The figure emerged from the ground like a grotesque nightmare, its body oozing with dark, putrid pus that dripped onto the ground like acid. Its eyes, blood-red and piercing, fixated on Michael with a gaze that sent chills down his spine. "Behold what you have wrought," the figure snarled, its voice a low growl oozing with malice and vengeance. "I am a vengeful hell walker, thanks to you." The creature's voice sounded like a chorus of tormented souls, each one crying out in agony and hatred. Michael remained resolute, his face stoic despite the terror that threatened to overwhelm him. The figure's voice was a disturbing blend of mournful wailing and seething malice, sending shivers down Gaia's spine. The Hell Walker's skin was pitch black, peeling off in some places, revealing the pulsating flesh underneath. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent red light, and its voice sounded like a cacophony of screeching metal and tortured souls. "Can't you see who I am in this form, ghost?" it snarled, saliva dripping from its mouth. Michael could sense the hatred and rage emanating from it, but couldn't recognize the Hell Walker's identity, hidden beneath its grotesque appearance. The Hell Walker's body convulsed, and its limbs elongated as if trying to escape its own skin. Its eyes locked onto Michael's, and a shiver ran down his spine as he saw a glimpse of recognition in them. Could it be someone he knew before? Michael wasn't sure, but he knew one thing for certain: this Hell Walker was out for revenge, and he was the target. Michael didn't fear the Hell Walker as one might have, but what surprised Michael was the Hell Walker's power. His power seemed to grow with time, and something told Michael the Hell Walker's power depended on his hatred toward him. As Michael looked at the Hell Walker, trying to figure out his identity, the Hell Walker decided to reveal his identity before he died and was sent to the realm of hell. Peter Belafort, heir of the Belafort family, he spat out. "That was before you brutally murdered me and turned me into this vengeful Hell Walker." His voice grew even more hostile with each passing moment. Gaia's eyes widened in shock as the identity of the Hell Walker was revealed. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The name Peter Belafort echoed in her head, and she felt a chill run down her spine. She stood there, frozen in shock, her mind unable to process the truth that had just been revealed. "You humiliated me, stripped me of my dignity, and made me a laughingstock. You imprisoned me and made me a subject of ridicule. But that wasn't enough for you, was it? You killed me in front of my own sister, and now I am cursed to suffer as a vengeful Hell Walker." Peter's voice was filled with pain, anger, and hatred. He was no longer the person he used to be. He had been transformed into a monstrous abomination fueled by his thirst for revenge against Michael. No trace of humanity was left in him, only a seething rage that threatened to consume him completely. Peter's voice suddenly turned into a peal of maniacal laughter that echoed across the mountain. Gaia shuddered at the sound, feeling the hair on the back of her neck stand up. Peter's laughter soon turned into words dripping with malice. "I have dreamed of this moment every day since I arrived in this hellish realm. I have dreamed of the many ways I would torture you, ghost. I will tear you limb from limb, drink your blood, and feast on your flesh. I will make you suffer beyond your wildest imagination. And when I am done, I will repeat everything again." Peter's voice was filled with blood-curdling rage. As he spoke, he described in vivid, gory detail how he would torture Michael, making Gaia's stomach churn with disgust and fear. With an unwavering gaze, Michael delivered a cold and unyielding message to the vengeful Hell Walker before him. "You made the grave mistake of crossing me in life, and now you're paying the price in death. Let this be a lesson to anyone who dares to challenge me." Despite the shock of learning the Hell Walker's true identity as Peter Belafort, Michael showed no fear or hesitation. The loss of his beloved dragon Nightmare and the betrayal of his mother had already filled him with a wave of unbridled anger, making Peter's threats seem like nothing more than a mere annoyance to Michael. Michael's voice dripped with coldness as he addressed Peter. You are not the only one who transformed into something else, Peter. A dark shroud began to envelop Michael, emanating a sense of foreboding that made the very air around them grow heavy. The glow of his eyes changed to an ominous mix of red and black, and as his power surged, the area around them began to darken. The ground shook, and a gust of wind started to pick up, hinting at the immense power Michael held within him. It was a glimpse of the Dark Lord's power, which was more than enough to unnerve Peter. With a fierce determination in his eyes, Michael unsheathed his dark sword from his back, the blade glinting in the dim light of the underworld. In one swift motion, he dashed at Peter, his sword slicing through the air with deadly precision. Peter tried to dodge, but he was too slow. The sword sliced through him, cutting him in half. A torrent of black pus spilled out of Peter's body, coating Michael in the foul-smelling liquid. But Michael didn't flinch. He stood there, his sword still in his hand, watching as Peter's two halves fell to the ground. The Hell Walker's screams filled the air, but they were quickly silenced as his body turned to ash and was carried away by the wind. Michael stood there for a moment, his eyes still glowing with the power of the Dark Lord. Just when Gaia thought the nightmare was over, the ground beneath them started to rumble once again. Gaia's eyes widened in disbelief as the crack in the ground widened, and Peter emerged from it, good as new. He laughed menacingly, and Gaia could see the hatred in his eyes. You thought you could defeat me that easily? I'm afraid it's not that simple this time, Peter said, his voice dripping with malice. Gaia's heart sank as she realized Peter would not go down so easily. Michael slowly turned around and saw the Hell Walker standing before him as good as he was before Michael cut him in half. Michael knew it wouldn't be that simple to kill a Hell Walker. As Peter manically laughed, Michael cracked his neck and prepared for another round. Michael slowly turned around and saw the Hell Walker standing before him, completely unscathed despite being cut in half moments before. Michael knew that it wouldn't be easy to kill a Hell Walker, especially one filled with so much hatred. As Peter's maniacal laughter filled the air, Michael remained unfazed and calmly cracked his neck, signaling his readiness for another round. Don't be too happy, Peter. I killed you once and I can do it again, Michael said with an air of confidence as he readied his sword for another strike. Peter only continued to laugh as he slowly approached Michaela's. Peter stepped toward Michael. He noticed a strange transformation happening to his body. A dim, eerie purple glow emanated from the center of the Hell Walker's body. Moreover, while Peter stepped closer to Michael, an evil sword materialized in his hand. The sword appeared to be made of black pus and pulsated with an ominous, evil energy. The sword seemed to draw power from the death aura surrounding them, as though it were fueled by the very essence of the realm they were in. Peter swung his black sword toward Michael with immense force, vowing to make him suffer before he moved on to Gaia. But Michael, with his fast reflexes, evaded each swing effortlessly. As the two fought, Peter began to taunt Michael with threats to harm Gaia once he was done with him. I'll make sure she suffers for every wound you've inflicted upon me, Peter growled, his eyes burning with malice. I'll make her scream and beg for mercy. Michael remained calm and focused during the fight, but when he heard Peter threaten Gaia, an uncontrollable rage filled him. His power exploded through the roof as he stopped evading Peter's sword swings and grabbed him by his hands, crushing them with his inhuman strength. The evil sword fell to the ground as Peter screamed in agony. Without mercy, Michael grabbed Peter's head and squeezed it with brute force, causing it to explode into a shower of bloody black mist. The mist fell to the ground, staining the ground with the corrupted remnants of the vengeful Hell Walker. Unfortunately, Peter's body began to reform, and in moments he was once again standing before Michael. His body was once again covered in dark pus, but he looked stronger than ever. Michael could see the eerie purple glow in the center of Peter's body had grown brighter. Is that all you got? Peter snarled at Michael, his voice filled with malice. Chapter 941 Castle of Hellas. Michael clashed with Peter in the realm of hell. He couldn't help but notice the difference in how energy and cultivation worked in this place. His power was different here. He felt stronger but wasn't at his full half-celestial power level. The darkness that surrounded them was the source of his strength. As the god of darkness and a newly minted half-celestial, his body was now able to harness the darkness around him and turn it into his own power. In this realm, there was little to no celestial or arch-energy, which meant that the Hell Walkers' power was solely dependent on their hatred and the depth of their torment in the pits of hell. The more hatred they held, the more powerful they became. Peter's hatred toward Michael knew no bounds, and his power was almost on par with Michael's in the realm of hell. If Peter were to fight Michael in his own world, Michael could have easily disposed of him with a snap of his fingers. Michael and Peter continued their brutal fight, with Michael always having the upper hand. He used his dark sword to slice off Peter's limbs, but they quickly grew back, thanks to his powers as a Hell Walker. Michael could feel the hatred emanating from Peter as he swung his sword wildly, trying to land a hit on Michael. As they clashed swords, the ground beneath them shook violently, and chunks of earth and rocks flew into the air. Michael's eyes glowed with a mix of red and black as he unleashed a dark aura that surrounded him, making him even more powerful. Meanwhile, Peter's sword glowed with a sickly black light, and he howled with rage as he swung it with even more ferocity. Blood and black pus flew everywhere as Michael sliced through Peter's body, but it only seemed to make him stronger. Their fight was bloody and gory. Black pus spattered everywhere as Michael continued to slice through Peter's body. Peter's sword cut deep into Michael's skin, but Michael showed no signs of pain as he continued to fight with his dark powers. The ground shook with every blow, and Michael's dark aura grew stronger with each attack. He knew that he needed to end this fight quickly, or else Peter would become too powerful to defeat. Peter laughed maniacally as Michael cut off another limb. "You can't kill what's already dead, Ghost. I am already damned to hell, but you will join me soon enough," Peter said, grinning from ear to ear. Michael simply smirked in response. "Is that all you have, Peter? You're not even a challenge to me anymore. You're just a pathetic creature, controlled by your own hatred." But Peter's laughter only grew louder. "Controlled by hatred? I am the hatred, Ghost. I am the fury of all those who were wronged and betrayed, and you will pay for what you did to me." The fight continued, with Michael slowly gaining the upper hand once again. But every time he managed to cut off a limb, it quickly grew back, and Peter's laughter only grew more maniacal. "You can't win, Ghost. I am invincible," Peter taunted. "I will torment you for all eternity." Michael's mind was in overdrive as he tried to figure out what it all meant. He knew that the Elven rune was powerful, but he had never seen anything like the hell flames before. As he looked at the eerie purple glow emanating from Peter's body, Michael could feel the darkness within him stirring. It was as if the flames and the glow were calling to him, beckoning him to unleash their power. Michael knew that this was his chance to end the fight once and for all. Time to end this. With a newfound determination, Michael leaped backward, creating some distance between him and Peter, and sheathed his sword back into the sheath on his back. As he slowly raised his hand, the dark flames emerged from his palm and danced around his wrist. Gaia felt the intense heat radiating from the dark flames and the pure pitch blackness of the flames. The air around them grew thick and heavy as the flames consumed the darkness, casting an eerie glow that illuminated the entire battlefield. As Michael conjured the dark flames, an intense heat radiated from his palm, causing Gaia to shield her face. The flames danced around his wrist, emitting a pure pitch blackness that seemed to swallow everything in its path. But as the dark flames grew stronger, the eerie purple glow within Peter intensified, pulsating like a beacon of malevolence. A low hissing sound filled the air, making Michael realize that the dark flames and the hell flames had some kind of history that he didn't know about. The dark flames began to move with a life of their own, as if they wanted to break free from Michael's grip and devour the purple glow. The hatred between the two forces grew stronger, and Michael knew that the battle was about to reach its climax. In this realm, where hatred fueled power, the dark flames and hell flames were like two volatile substances that, when mixed, threatened to explode with immense power. As the dark flames danced around Michael's wrist and the eerie purple glow in Peter's body grew brighter, both Michael and Peter felt a surge of power coursing through them, making them even stronger than before. The hatred between the flames was palpable, like two caged beasts waiting for a chance to tear each other apart. As the dark flames swirled around his wrist, Michael dashed towards Peter with lightning-fast speed, leaving a trail of afterimages in his wake. Gaia was awestruck as she could barely make out Michael's figure, which moved so fast that it seemed like a blur. Peter, on the other hand, swung his sword violently and erratically, driven only by his boundless hatred. Michael easily evaded all of Peter's attacks, but he could sense that something else was controlling Peter, perhaps the hell flames that animated him. Michael realized that Peter had already lost his sanity when he became a hell walker, but now he had completely transformed into an abomination of hell. With the fight taking a toll on both of them, Michael knew it was time to end it. He gathered all his strength and punched Peter in the gut with such force that his hand penetrated through his back. Peter stumbled backward, but Michael wasn't done yet. He conjured the dark flames, ready to face the hell flames that he knew would emerge from Peter. Just as expected, the purple eerie glow crawled out of Peter's body and took the form of flames. Michael braced himself as he heard a chilling voice emanating from the hell flames. "Welcome to my second home." Although he rarely felt fear, the voice sent shivers down his spine. "The dark flames. I sense your hatred. This is the dominion of the damned, and we rule here. We have long awaited this moment, the moment we can make you suffer and consume your flames," spoke the hell flames cryptically, its twisted glee sending shivers down Michael's spine. The intense and consuming hatred from the hell flames was palpable as they spoke, a hatred that had been festering for centuries. "Your hatred fuels me, just as mine fuels you. It's an endless cycle of agony and despair, a dance between predator and prey. But remember, as much as I need your hatred, I also need you to suffer. And I promise, I will make you suffer like you never have before," said the voice with a twisted satisfaction that sent shivers down the listener's spine. "I have lost count of how many have threatened to end me, yet here I am," Michael sneered, his voice filled with defiance. The hell flames responded with a malicious laugh, and Michael watched as they took control of Peter's body. Suddenly, Peter's eyes began to glow with a purple flame that radiated an eerie light. Michael, in turn, willed the darkness around him and shrouded himself in a cloud of inky blackness. His eyes flickered between a menacing red and black, while the dark flames danced and flickered around his body, fully enveloping him. As the two opposing forces faced off against each other, the tension in the air grew thicker, almost palpable. The hatred that had been festering between them was now fully unleashed, and it was clear that only one of them would emerge victorious. When the two clashed, the sound of metal against metal rang out as they exchanged sword strikes. Michael's movements were precise and calculated, while Peter's were wild and fueled by hatred. Michael easily evaded all of Peter's sword strikes, leaving him open for Michael's attacks. Every time Michael landed a hit, Peter's black pus oozed out from the wound and healed almost instantly. Despite Peter's quick regeneration, Michael remained undeterred. He continued to fight with ferocity, knowing that his own power was also growing stronger with every passing moment. The dark flames around him burned brighter, fueled by his own hatred and the hatred of the hell flames. As they continued to fight, Michael's strikes grew more forceful and accurate. Peter's attacks became increasingly wild, as though he was desperate to land a hit. Michael saw his opening and seized it, delivering a powerful strike that sliced through Peter's chest. Black pus gushed out from the wound as Peter stumbled backward, but Michael wasn't finished yet. With a swift and calculated motion, Michael spun around and delivered a powerful kick that sent Peter flying across the battlefield. The impact was so intense that Peter crashed into the ground, leaving a deep impression on the soil. Michael was in full control of his powers, and the darkness that enveloped him only added to his strength. As he raised his hand, the darkness around him grew thicker and swirled with an eerie energy. With a flick of his wrist, Michael summoned the remaining fragments of Peter's body to float towards him through the darkness. Peter squirmed and tried to claw his way out of Michael's grasp, but it was too late. Michael had already summoned the dark flames and willed them to envelop Peter's body completely. Peter screamed in agony, but his screams were laced with maniacal laughter that echoed through the battlefield. Michael watched in satisfaction as the dark flames consumed the Hell Walker, burning him to nothingness. However, Michael knew that it wouldn't be that simple to end the existence of a primordial flame like the Hell Flames. Just as Michael expected, the eerie purple flames that embodied the power of hell reappeared in the air above them, mocking him with its cryptic laughter. Michael could feel the malice emanating from the flames as it spoke, taunting him with its promise of destruction and suffering. "You thought you could destroy me so easily, Michael? This is just the beginning. The fires of hell will rain down upon your world, and you and all those you hold dear will suffer for all eternity." The hell flames cackle maniacally, its words echoing in Michael's mind like a haunting melody. Michael knew that this was far from over, that the hell flames would continue to seek revenge against him and all that he held dear. But he was not afraid, for he was the god of darkness. He took a deep breath and raised his hand, conjuring a dense cloud of darkness around him. The darkness swirled and coiled around him like a living thing, ready to strike at any moment. As suddenly as they had appeared, the hell flames disappeared from the sky. Michael was left standing in the darkness, his heart racing with anticipation. He knew that the threat of the hell flames was far from over, and that he would need to be vigilant if he was to protect the people he cared about. Michael gazed up at the empty sky where the hell flames had ominously laughed before disappearing. He took a deep breath, knowing that while the hell flames were a problem, his first priority was to leave this realm. Turning to face Gaia, he gently brushed her face before focusing his attention on the castle looming in the distance. "We need to get answers, and I think we'll find them in there," Michael said, his voice unwavering. Gaia nodded, still in a state of shock from the intense battle they had just witnessed. As they began to make their way towards the castle, Michael couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. Unbeknownst to Michael, the ruler of hell and the infamous fallen god who had once made the pantheon tremble were eagerly awaiting his arrival. As he made his way towards the looming castle in the distance, he had no idea that he was about to cross paths with one of the most feared entities in the universe. The fallen god, whose name was whispered in hushed tones by even the bravest of warriors, was eager to come face to face with Michael, the god of darkness. "Who wants to give your fave author a super gift?" Shamelessly smiling. Chapter 942, A Fallen God's Revenge. As they continued to fly towards the castle, Michael noticed that the distance between them and the castle remained unchanged. The castle appeared to be just as distant as it was when they first started flying. It wasn't until a while later that Michael realized they were trapped in an illusion barrier. Gaia held onto Michael tightly as they flew through the air, taking in the sight of the countless tormented hell walkers below. It reminded Gaia of the undead on the undead island, but the hell walkers were on a different level. They couldn't be killed by simply cutting off their head like the undead. Even after Michael had cut off Peter's head, he had come back good as new with a new head. "I think we are inside an illusion." Michael quickly realized that they were trapped in an illusion barrier, and he could sense that the source of the illusion was not a single entity but rather multiple sources. To his surprise, Michael discovered that the sources of the illusion were the countless hell walkers that were roaming on the ground. As he scanned the area, he felt like he was being watched, and his senses heightened as he tried to locate the source of the feeling. Despite the feeling of being watched, Michael remained composed and focused. His priority was to break the illusion, and he knew that meant taking down the hell walkers. With a calm demeanor, he turned to Gaia and stated their plan. "We have to eliminate the hell walkers to break this illusion," Michael said, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of weakness. Gaia nodded, hoping that they could break free of the illusion as soon as possible. As Michael slowly descended to the ground, the hell walkers growled and reached for him in the sky. Michael remained unfazed, hovering over them, and using his abilities to his advantage. With a swift movement of his hand, he cast the Ring of Flames spell, causing a wave of dark flames to shoot out of his hand and sweep across the ground, taking down the hell walkers in its path. Despite their grotesque appearance, Michael felt no remorse, knowing that he had to do what was necessary to break the illusion and move forward. With the last of the hell walkers burned away, Michael and Gaia turned their attention to the horizon. There, standing tall against the hazy sky, was a monstrous creature with black fur and fiery red eyes. Its body was massive, towering over the already imposing castle in the distance. The creature's fur seemed to absorb the light around it, making it look like a shadow come to life. Its eyes glowed with intense hatred, fixated on Michael and Gaia as they floated in the air. Its sharp claws dug into the ground, leaving deep marks as it began to move towards them with a thunderous roar that shook the very ground they were on. This creature was not like anything he had ever faced before. Its mere presence exuded a menacing aura that made him feel like he was facing a force of nature. And yet, he could not back down. He had come too far to turn back now. As the creature closed in on them, Michael readied himself for battle. He conjured the dark flames around him, allowing its pure darkness to envelop him. Gaia clung onto Michael tightly as the creature charged, its red eyes glowing brighter with each passing moment. The creature's roar echoed through the battlefield, sending shockwaves through the air that made Michael's ears ring. Its black fur glistened in the dim light, and its red eyes glowed with an eerie intensity. Michael knew he was facing a formidable foe, one that he couldn't take lightly. With a quick glance at Gaia, he summoned the darkness around them and lifted her into the air, keeping her out of harm's way. As the creature approached, Michael felt the pull of its gravity field increases exponentially, forcing him to stay on the ground. But he remained calm and focused, ready to face this challenge head-on. He knew he could use the darkness to his advantage and even defy gravity if necessary. But for now, he chose to stay on the ground and face the creature in close combat. What the fuck is that thing? Gaia's eyes widened in horror as she gazed upon the monstrous creature. It had black fur covering its massive body and red eyes that seemed to glow with an unholy fury. Its claws were sharp enough to tear through steel, and its jaws looked powerful enough to crush a boulder. Gaia couldn't help but wonder how many more abominations hell had waiting for them. Despite being unable to use her cultivation power, Gaia still had Michael's specially crafted arrows in her quiver. As the black-furred creature charged towards Michael with alarming speed, Gaia quickly notched an arrow in her bow, taking into account the increased gravity, and let it fly. The arrow arced through the air and hit the creature directly in the center of its head, detonating on impact and engulfing the creature in flames. The explosion wasn't enough to kill the creature, but it provided Michael with the opening he needed to make his move. With his dark sword in hand, Michael charged toward the massive creature. He kept his second sword sheathed as he felt that one dark sword would be enough to take down the creature, and he needed his other hand free to wield his dark flames. As he closed in on the creature, Michael defied the increased gravity and leaped into the air. He then channeled his power into his sword and unleashed a bolt of lightning from its tip, aimed directly at the creature. The lightning bolt tore through the creature's skull, leaving a gaping hole where its head once was. However, to Gaia's shock, the creature didn't fall down. Instead, it multiplied in the blink of an eye, dividing itself into 3 identical creatures. Before Michael could react, one of the creatures charged at him from behind, its claws ready to strike. The two collided with a deafening explosion, but Michael's half-celestial body was stronger than he had ever imagined. He grabbed the creature's fur and lifted it with ease, his muscles bulging with raw power. Gaia watched in awe as Michael spun around and used the creature as a weapon, smashing it into the other 2 creatures with devastating force. It was a display of raw strength and skill that left Gaia breathless. As Michael engaged in a fierce battle against the hellish creatures, the ruler of hell, the infamous fallen god Dagon, sat upon his throne, observing the combat with a feed hovering before him. Dagon's black eyes gleamed with amusement as he watched the god of darkness in action. Despite his amusement, there was a hint of intrigue in Dagon's expression, as if he had stumbled upon something unexpected. He fights with the same ferocity as he did 5,000 years ago, yet there is something different about him now, Dagon mused aloud, his voice smooth as silk. No one could discern whether Dagon harbored any enmity toward the fellow god, as his expression and amused smile remained inscrutable. Only Dagon knew the thoughts churning within his mind. As Dagon watched Michael battling the creatures within his castle, The hell flames materialized around him, taking the shape of a face with no distinguishable features except for 2 hollow eyes and a gaping mouth. Enough admiring. The hell flames hissed with a voice filled with malice and contempt towards Michael. Dagon merely chuckled, unperturbed by the hostility of the flames. Of course, my dear friend, you will get what you desire once we have dealt with the Pantheon. The hell flames shifted in agitation, their ghostly form flickering with anger. And what of the dark flames and its twin? I want them both obliterated, their existence erased from this universe. Dagon's expression remained unreadable, his amused smile still present. Do not worry, my dear friend. I have not forgotten our bargain. Once the Pantheon has been dealt with, the dark flames and its twin shall meet their end. The hell flames seethed with anticipation, eager for the destruction of their ancient enemy. I will hold you to your word, Dagon. Dagon merely waved a dismissive hand. Of course, my friend, you have nothing to worry about. The hell flames flickered one last time in the feed, sending a malevolent gaze toward Michael before vanishing into Dagon's body. It was no secret that the hell flames were the most unstable and vicious of all primordial flames, with a penchant for consuming hatred as fuel. Its choice of Dagon as a host was not surprising, for the fallen god harbored an endless amount of hatred toward the Pantheon. Together, they made a formidable pair with their own twisted agendas, united in their desire to bring destruction to everything the Pantheon had created. As Dagon pondered his plans, a towering orc, one of his generals, materialized before him. The orc knelt before Dagon, showing his utmost respect to the ruler of hell. The orc's massive frame was covered in thick, dark fur, and his skin was an ashen gray. He had a brutish face, with a prominent jawline and a flat, wide nose. His yellow eyes glimmered with fierce intelligence, and his mouth was filled with razor-sharp teeth. The orc's massive shoulders were adorned with spiked pauldrons, and his chest was covered in a thick plate of blackened steel. His arms were thick and muscular, and his hands were large and calloused from years of wielding weapons in battle. He wore gauntlets made from the bones of fallen enemies, and his fingers were adorned with rings made from precious metals and gems. At his waist, he carried a massive, curved blade, its edge glinting in the dim light of the throne room. The hilt of the sword was wrapped in black leather, and its pommel was adorned with a blood-red gemstone. The orc's legs were thick and powerful, covered in fur-lined boots that reached up to his knees. The orc's presence alone exuded power and strength, and his loyalty to Dagon was unwavering. He awaited his ruler's command with a bowed head, ready to carry out his orders no matter the cost. Dagon's eyes gleamed with anticipation as he spoke to his loyal general, the towering orc who knelt before him. Ah, Grimgor, you have arrived just in time. Prepare the Ascension Tower. We will be breaking through the barrier to our home in a matter of hours. Grimgor had faithfully served Dagon for countless years, but he had never expected to hear those words from his lord's mouth. When Dagon spoke of breaking through the barrier to their home, Grimgor's eyes widened in disbelief. Could it really be true? After all these years, was their exile finally coming to an end? My lord, Grimgor stammered, struggling to contain his emotions. He could hardly believe his ears, but the glint in Dagon's eyes told him that this was no jest. His heart raced with excitement and anticipation, but a small part of him held back in fear. After all, they had been exiled to this place for a reason. Dagon seemed to read the orc's thoughts and reassured him with a sly smile. You heard me right, Grimgor. We are going home, he said, his voice filled with excitement and a hint of madness. Grimgor couldn't help but feel a surge of hope and gratitude for his lord's words. He knew that Dagon was a formidable force, feared by many, and that following him was the only chance they had to reclaim their home. As Dagon's maniacal laughter echoed through the castle, Grimgor stood up with a newfound sense of purpose. He would do whatever it took to help Dagon achieve their shared goal. And with the Ascension Tower already prepared, it seemed that their journey home was closer than ever before. But when Grimgor was about to make his way out of the throne hall, he noticed a glimpse of the god of darkness in the feed, causing all his excitement and joy to vanish instantly. His expression transformed from joy to shock and then to sheer terror. Even a brute like Grimgor couldn't hide the fear in his eyes at the sight of the god of darkness. Memories of what happened 5,000 years ago and the destruction brought down by the god of darkness flooded Grimgor's mind, making him tremble in fear. He knew firsthand the devastation that the god of darkness was capable of, and the mere thought of facing him once again was enough to make Grimgor's blood run cold. Dagon noticed the fear in Grimgor's eyes but showed no sign of concern. Instead, he casually waved his hand, dismissing Grimgor's worry. "Don't fret, Grimgor. Everything is going according to plan, and we won't have to think about him for a long time," Dagon said, a devilish grin spreading across his face. Grimgor tried to hide his fear and nodded, though his expression was still uneasy. He knew better than to doubt his lord's plans, but the memory of the god of darkness and his destructive power still haunted him. Chapter 943, Unleashing the Power. Michael continued to fight the three creatures with fierce determination. He swung his dark sword with precision, slicing through their thick hides and dealing massive damage. The creatures were relentless, however, and continued to attack with their sharp claws and teeth. Blood sprayed across the room as Michael dodged and weaved through their attacks. His black skin was stained with the creature's blood, but he showed no signs of slowing down. With each strike of his sword, he channeled the darkness within him, unleashing waves of dark energy that sent the creatures reeling. One of the creatures managed to sink its teeth into Michael's shoulder, causing him to grunt in pain. He retaliated by plunging his sword into the creature's neck, causing it to roar in agony. As it fell to the ground, Michael ripped the sword out and turned to face the other two creatures. The creatures circled him, growling and snarling with bloodlust. Michael's eyes glowed crimson as he prepared for their next attack. Suddenly, one of the creatures lunged forward, claws extended. Michael sidestepped the attack and countered with a swift kick to the creature's stomach, sending it flying across the room. The third creature charged forward, its massive horns aimed straight for Michael's chest. Michael ducked and rolled under the attack, coming up behind the creature. With one swift motion, he sliced off one of its legs, causing it to stumble and fall to the ground. The creatures continued to attack, their wounds oozing blood onto the stone floor. Michael was bleeding from several cuts and gashes, but he refused to back down. He knew that he had to keep fighting until the creatures were defeated. With a fierce roar, Michael charged forward, ready to deliver the final blow. The creatures braced themselves for impact, but Michael surprised them by unleashing a massive blast of dark energy. The energy engulfed the creatures, causing them to scream in agony as they were consumed by the darkness. As Michael fought the three creatures with his dark sword, Gaia provided air support with her bow and arrows. She flew above the battlefield and scanned the area for any threats. With each pass, she fired a special arrow at the creatures, hitting them with deadly precision. The first arrow she fired was an explosive arrow, which detonated on impact and sent the creatures flying. The second arrow she fired was a freeze arrow, which enveloped the creatures in ice and slowed their movements. The third arrow she fired was a poison arrow, which injected a deadly toxin into the creature's bloodstream and weakened them. Gaia's aim was true, and each arrow hit its mark with devastating effect. The creatures howled in pain and rage as they tried to swat her out of the air, but Gaia was too quick and agile for them. She dodged their attacks with ease and continued to rain down arrows on them, never missing a shot. Her air support was invaluable to Michael, as it gave him the time and space he needed to deal with the creatures one by one. The fight was intense and bloody, with Michael and Gaia fighting for their lives against the formidable creatures. But they were determined to succeed, and with each passing moment, they got closer to victory. The creatures were relentless, but so were Michael and Gaia. They fought with all their might, using every skill and ability they had, until finally, they had the creatures on the ropes. As Michael and Gaia continued to fight the creatures, they noticed that despite the severe damage they inflicted, the creatures quickly regenerated their limbs and healed their wounds. Michael was not surprised by this, as he had encountered similar creatures in the past, but Gaia was taken aback by their ability. With each blow Michael dealt, The creature's limbs would be sliced off or burned by Michael's dark flames. But within moments, new limbs would sprout from their stumps, and their burns would heal. Even Gaia's special arrows couldn't stop their regeneration. It was like they were fighting a vampire. No matter how many times they cut off a limb, it only grew back stronger. Despite their seemingly infinite regeneration, Michael and Gaia refused to give up. They knew that they had to find a way to defeat the creatures before they overpowered them. As the battle raged on, Michael's fury and frustration began to boil over. The memories of his mother's betrayal and the loss of his dear nightmare weighed heavily on his mind, driving him to lash out with even greater force. With each strike of his dark sword, he poured all his anger and pain into the attack, hacking and slashing at the creatures with a ferocity that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Gaia watched in amazement as Michael unleashed his pent-up emotions on the creatures. She could see the intensity of his attacks and the raw power that he wielded. It was clear that he was using the battle as an outlet for his anger and sorrow, and that he was not ready to let it end until he had fully expressed his emotions. The creature's regeneration abilities proved to be no match for Michael's relentless onslaught. With each attack, he sliced off limbs and tore apart their bodies, leaving them writhing in agony. And yet, despite the punishment they received, the creatures continued to heal themselves, their bodies slowly knitting back together even as Michael hacked them apart. As the battle continued, Michael's attacks became even more savage, fueled by his unrelenting anger and despair. He seemed almost possessed, a whirlwind of darkness and fury that tore through the creatures with unmatched ferocity. And through it all, Gaia stood by his side, providing support with her arrows and marveling at the sheer power and intensity of the god of darkness. Ah! Michael's roar echoed through the battlefield, sending shockwaves through the air. His eyes glowed with otherworldly energy as he unleashed his fury upon the creatures. Each strike of his sword was accompanied by a deafening sound, as if the very fabric of reality was tearing apart. It was a roar of pure rage and anguish, a primal cry that spoke of untold suffering and loss. Michael's eyes burned with a fierce intensity as he unleashed his fury on the creatures. With every swing of his dark sword, he let out a primal roar that echoed through the halls of the castle. His muscles bulged with raw power, fueled by his rage and grief. He attacked the creatures with savage ferocity, his sword slicing through flesh and bone with ease. He didn't care about strategy or finesse. He only wanted to unleash his pent-up anger and frustration. Gaia watched from the sidelines, stunned by the display of raw power and emotion. It was a gruesome and bloody battle, with Michael covered in the blood of his enemies. But he didn't stop, even as his arms grew tired and his breathing became ragged. He was determined to let out all of his suppressed emotions, to unleash his full power, and become the darkness that he was born to be. Gradually, Michael's eyes turned blood-red with fury as he finally decided to end the fight. He lifted his dark sword and called upon the power of the darkness. Suddenly, waves of dark flames erupted from his body, enveloping the entire battlefield in a shroud of darkness. The creatures roared and snarled, but their voices were drowned out by Michael's furious howls. As Michael unleashed the full force of his dark power, the sky above the battlefield turned black as dark lightning bolts crackled and swirled around him. With each swing of his sword, the ground trembled, and the creatures were blasted back by the sheer force of his attacks. The battlefield was plunged into a darkness so deep that it seemed like the end of the world. But through the darkness, Michael could see the glowing eyes of the creatures as they slowly backed away, their bodies charred and burned by the intense flames. Michael continued to roar and unleash waves of dark flames, his anger and frustration fueling his attacks. He knew he couldn't hold back anymore and needed to finish the fight. The dark lightning bolts surrounding him grew stronger and more intense, and suddenly, with one final swing of his sword, a massive explosion of dark energy erupted from his body. The creatures were engulfed in the explosion, their bodies disintegrating into ash as they were consumed by Michael's dark flames. The battlefield was finally still, and the darkness slowly lifted, revealing Michael standing alone amidst the smoldering ruins of the once terrifying creatures. As Gaia watched Michael unleash his power, she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe mixed with fear. She had seen Michael use his dark flames and lightning bolts before, but this time it was different. It felt like Michael had truly embraced the darkness within him, letting it consume him and fuel his power. The waves of dark flames that Michael unleashed were unlike anything she had ever seen before. They were so dark and powerful that they seemed to suck the light out of everything around them. The bolts of dark lightning that crackled around him added to the ominous atmosphere, making the battlefield feel like a place of pure darkness and malevolence. Despite her fear, Gaia couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and admiration for Michael. She knew that he was fighting with all his might, not just to defeat the creatures but also to vent his suppressed emotions. The sight of Michael unleashing his full power was both beautiful and terrifying, and it left Gaia feeling a mix of emotions that she couldn't quite put into words. When the three creatures were put out of existence, Michael stood up with a fierce expression on his face. Suddenly, the ground started to crack and break apart as hundreds of Hellwalkers emerged from the depths of hell. They were all different shapes and sizes, but each one was just as terrifying as the last. Gaia's eyes widened in shock and horror as she saw the massive horde of Hellwalkers. She knew they were in for a tough battle. Each Hellwalker was easily powerful enough to kill a fusion stage cultivator with ease. Their blackened skin was tough as steel, and their glowing red eyes were filled with an insatiable hunger for blood. The horde of Hellwalkers was massive, stretching as far as the eye could see. Their growls were deep and guttural, reverberating through the ground like an earthquake. Their eyes glowed with an eerie red light, and their movements were slow and deliberate, like that of zombies. They appeared almost mindless in their determination to attack and destroy anything in their path. Despite their undead appearance, their physical strength and power were undeniable. Each one of them was strong enough to take on a fusion stage cultivator with ease, and their numbers were overwhelming. As they emerged from the cracks in the ground, the battlefield was plunged into darkness, and the air was thick with the stench of death and decay. Michael stood calm and collected, unfazed by the horde of Hellwalkers emerging from the ground. His eyes remained fixed on the approaching army, and he raised his hand towards the sky with a serene sense of purpose. The winds around him began to pick up, the air crackling with energy as he prepared to unleash his power. Despite the overwhelming numbers of the Hellwalkers, Michael remained stoic, his gaze unflinching as he called forth the darkness. As Michael raised his hand, the sky seemed to ripple and warp as if it were a mere veil waiting to be pulled back. Suddenly, 3 massive meteors, each one ablaze with a crimson-red flame, appeared in the sky above. They hung there for a moment, suspended in time, before hurtling down toward the horde of Hellwalkers below. The ground shook as the meteors struck the earth, creating massive craters that swallowed up the Hellwalkers. The force of the impact sent shockwaves rippling through the air, shattering nearby structures and kicking up clouds of dust and debris. The sound was deafening, a roar that drowned out all other noise. After discovering the truth about his family, Michael's emotions had been a maelstrom of anger, betrayal, and grief. However, he had used the storm of emotions to fuel his power, and he had truly embraced the darkness within him. This allowed his power to grow beyond any limits he had previously known. With each passing moment, Michael felt his power surge through him like an unstoppable force. The darkness within him had become a part of him, and he had learned to wield it like a weapon. As the smoke cleared, Michael descended from the sky and surveyed the destruction he had wrought. The horde of Hellwalkers lay decimated, reduced to nothing but ash and rubble. The air was thick with the smell of burnt flesh and sulfur, and the ground was scorched black from the heat of the impact. Gaia stared in awe at the sight before her, barely able to comprehend the sheer power that Michael had just unleashed. For a moment, she felt a flicker of fear, wondering if Michael's power was too great for him to control. But then she saw the determination in his eyes, the way his jaw was set, and she knew that he was in control. He had unleashed his true power and brought destruction to their enemies, and there was no stopping him now. When the dust settled from the impact of the meteors, the battlefield was unrecognizable. The ground was scorched and cracked, and the air was thick with smoke and the stench of burnt flesh. The bodies of the Hell Walkers were charred and twisted, their once formidable figures reduced to nothing but ash and bone. In the midst of this destruction stood Michael, the god of darkness. His body was wreathed in black flames, and his eyes glowed with an unearthly light. The power he had unleashed upon the battlefield was beyond comprehension, and it was clear that he had truly embraced the darkness within him. Chapter 944, Headmaster of Mazeroth. The following chapter took place before Michael learned about Nightmare's death and appeared at Nagaland. As Michael emerged from the Sea Realm with Harry in tow, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. He knew that Layla, Harry's mother, would be anxiously awaiting their arrival on the floating mountain. However, Michael was also aware that he had the grim task of informing Layla that her own sister, Edith, had been the one responsible for Harry's abduction. He had no regrets about taking Edith's life. In fact, he only wished he had done so earlier. Michael knew that Layla had loved Edith deeply, even if she had not always shown it, and he was prepared for the potential backlash from both Layla and Harry. Nevertheless, Michael had acted in accordance with what he believed was right and just, and that was all that mattered to him. Michael flew through the starry night sky, holding Harry tightly in his arms, feeling the weight of the child's peaceful slumber against his chest. Michael couldn't help but marvel at how much Harry had grown since he last saw him through the surveillance mirror. The once helpless baby was now a toddler with a full head of messy hair and a chubby yet remarkably resilient body. Michael couldn't help but feel a sense of protectiveness towards the child and a desire to ensure that he could grow up in a world free of violence and chaos. He down at Harry and couldn't help but feel a tinge of guilt. He knew that his actions had caused pain and suffering for those he cared about, including Layla and the innocent child in his arms. But as Michael felt Harry's soft skin and heard his gentle breathing, he also knew that he had made the right choice in killing Edith. No one should have the power to use innocent lives as pawns in a game of power, and Michael was willing to bear the burden of that responsibility. While he soared above the tranquil ocean, Michael wondered what kind of future awaited Harry. Would he grow up to be a hero like his mother, or would he be forever haunted by the darkness that surrounded him? Regardless, Michael was determined to do everything in his power to ensure that Harry had a chance to live a long and fulfilling life. The fate of the world may hang in the balance, but for now, all that mattered was the peaceful slumber of a child in his arms. Michael's thoughts drifted to Harry's future, and it weighed heavily on his mind, causing a dull ache to throb in his temples. Before he had left for the Sea Realm, Michael had offered to take Layla and Harry with him to the floating mountain, where they would be safe from the dangers of the outside world. But Layla had rejected the offer, adamantly refusing to expose her son to Michael's dark army or to be involved in his war against the world. Michael couldn't blame her for her decision, but he couldn't shake off the feeling that Harry's future was uncertain and that the boy deserved a chance at a peaceful life. Despite Michael's offer to protect Layla and Harry from the dangers of his dark army, Layla had made it clear that she wanted nothing to do with him or his war. Michael couldn't shake off the worry for Harry's future and the nagging feeling that Layla had a plan in place. He tried suggesting sending them to a separate pocket dimension, but Layla refused. As Michael was deep in thought about their safety, a strong gust of wind brushed past him, causing him to stop in his tracks. A feeling of unease crept up on Michael as he sensed a powerful figure suddenly appears behind him. When Michael turned around, he was met with the sight of a towering figure hovering in the air before him. The man appeared to be the embodiment of peace and wisdom, radiating a calming aura that put Michael at ease. He had long, flowing white hair and a matching beard that fluttered gently in the wind while his eyes twinkled with a sense of knowing. He wore long, flowing purple robes that seemed to billow around him as he moved, and half-moon-shaped glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, giving him an air of intellect and sophistication. "Who you might be?" Michael asked with an air of calmness. The old man took a moment to respond, his gaze slowly scanning over Michael from head to toe. The man exuded an aura of peaceful wisdom, as if he held knowledge of all things in the world. Michael attempted to sense the old man's power, but to his surprise, he found himself unable to do so. It was as if a powerful magic had been placed around the old man to prevent Michael from gauging his strength. The old man's voice was deep and resonant, filled with a sense of wisdom and authority that commanded Michael's attention. The man's eyes sparkled with intelligence behind his half-moon glasses, making it clear that he was not a person to be underestimated. "Such a loss that you chose not to return to Amazaroth, ghost," the old man repeated, his voice tinged with a hint of regret. "Professor Lane speaks of you often, and that is saying something, considering his usual reluctance to discuss former students." The old man's smile was warm, but there was a hint of something else in his expression that Michael couldn't quite identify. Michael fixed his gaze on the old man before him, his eyes scrutinizing him as he asked, "You didn't answer my question." His tone was calm, but there was an underlying hint of curiosity and suspicion as he tried to discern the identity of the stranger who had appeared before him. "The headmaster of Mazeroth, Wulfric Wells III, replied the old man in a calm and collected voice. As Wulfric revealed his identity, Michael's eyes widened in shock and disbelief. The headmaster of Mazeroth, one of the most renowned academies of magic, was standing before him. Michael had heard about Wulfric's reputation as an accomplished wizard, but he never expected to meet him in person. Despite his surprise, Michael couldn't help but wonder why Wulfric had come all the way to him. It was clear that the headmaster was not here to fight, but there had to be a reason for his unexpected appearance. Michael's mind raced as he tried to come up with possible explanations for the headmaster's visit. While Michael was trying to decipher why the headmaster of Mazeroth had appeared before him, he suddenly sensed a new presence. He turned his gaze and saw Layla, Harry's mother, standing beside Wulfric. Michael was taken aback by her sudden appearance, but he maintained his composure and assessed her expression for any signs of hostility or resentment towards him. Layla's sudden appearance took Michael aback, but he was even more taken aback when he saw the overwhelming joy on her face at the sight of Harry safe and sound in his arms. She cried tears of relief and delight as she rushed towards him. Layla's eyes, which were always cold and calculated, were now filled with warmth and love as she took Harry from Michael's arms and held him tightly. She dashed towards Michael and took Harry into her arms, holding him tightly against her chest. The warmth of Harry's body made her feel alive again, as if a part of her had been missing and had just returned to her. She hugged him tightly, grateful for his safe return, and did not want to let him go. She embraced him with a passion that could only be compared to the fierce love of a mother who had lost her child and now had him back in her arms. In that moment, Layla felt like she was coming back to life. "What happened to him?" Layla asked, her voice laced with concern as she saw her son sleeping in Michael's arms. She immediately feared that something might have happened to him in the Sea Realm. "He's fine, just sleeping," Michael reassured her. He could sense the love and worry in Layla's voice, and he knew that Harry meant everything to her. "It's best to let him rest for now. He's been through a lot." Layla nodded, relieved to know that Harry was safe and sound. She held him close and whispered soothing words, feeling grateful that Michael had saved her son. As Layla was showering Harry with kisses and hugs, Michael shifted his attention to Wulfric. He had knocked out Layla and left her safely in his castle, so he was puzzled as to how Wulfric had managed to find her. But when Michael examined the energy fluctuations and power radiation surrounding Wulfric, he realized that the headmaster had somehow freed Layla from his castle. After a moment of silence, Michael turned his gaze towards Wulfric Wells and spoke up, breaking the tension. "Why are you here, headmaster?" he inquired, his voice firm and steady. Despite his surprise at Wulfric's sudden appearance, Michael maintained his composure and remained wary of the headmaster's motives. He knew that Wulfric would not have come to him without a good reason, and Michael's instincts told him that it was something important. "We are going to Mazeroth," Layla spoke up, interrupting the silence between Michael and Wulfric. Michael couldn't help but feel a twinge of concern in his heart upon hearing her decision. While he had previously considered Mazeroth as a safe haven for Layla and Harry, he knew all too well that Mazeroth was under the control of Skyhall, his sworn enemies. He couldn't bear the thought of Harry being used as a pawn against him in the future, as had happened with Noah. However, as Michael looked into Layla's eyes, he saw a steely determination that he knew he would not be able to sway. Despite his reservations about Mazeroth, He could see that Layla had made up her mind and would not be dissuaded easily. It was clear to Michael that Layla was fiercely protective of her son and was willing to do whatever it took to keep him safe, even if it meant going against Michael's wishes. He knew it would be a difficult battle to try and convince her otherwise. Wulfric could see the worry in Michael's eyes, and he spoke in a calm and reassuring tone. "You can trust me, Michael. Mazeroth is not under Skyhall's control," Wulfric said, sensing Michael's concerns about Harry's safety. Michael still had doubts about sending Harry to Mazeroth. He knew Skyhall had a firm grip on many realms, including Mazeroth, and he feared that they might use Harry as a weapon against him in the future. "Who says they don't control it, Headmaster? They control almost everything, and imagine what they would do to him once they learn he's my blood," Michael countered, expressing his concerns to Wulfric. "I made my decision, Ghost. We are going to Mazeroth, where my son will receive the education and safety he deserves." Layla interrupted Michael before he could say a word. Michael was about to argue, but Layla's eyes were determined and unwavering. "You didn't listen to me when you rushed into absorbing the first energy. You didn't listen to me when I asked you to keep an eye on Harry. Your decisions have put either you or those around you in danger every time. And now you are willing to risk his life." Michael tried to reason with her, but Layla cut him off once again. "Stop." Layla's voice was firm yet gentle. "I made my decision, Ghost. You were the one who cut all ties with us. I asked you to leave everything behind and come with us, but you refused. You didn't want any part in our lives. I am sorry we dragged you into this, but it won't happen again once we reach Mazeroth. I trust Headmaster Wells, and this is my final decision," Layla said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Michael tried to reason with Layla, arguing that Mazeroth was not as safe as she thought and that Harry's safety could not be guaranteed. He reminded her of the dangers they faced in the past and the fact that their enemies would stop at nothing to get to him. But Layla remained steadfast in her decision, and her trust in Wulfric was unshakable. Michael's frustration grew as he realized he could not change her mind, and he knew that arguing further would only cause more tension between them. Eventually, Michael relented, knowing that Layla's decision was final. He silently hoped that he would not regret letting Harry go to Mazeroth and that he would find a way to keep him safe from afar. Layla let out a deep sigh, her voice laced with regret and sadness as she spoke. "It seems like the darkness has truly changed you, Ghost. Even now, you are reluctant to let us go to Mazeroth as if you value your own safety above our lives." Michael could feel her words piercing through him, but he could not deny that there was a grain of truth to them. Michael knew there was no point in arguing with Layla, so he approached Harry and gently placed his hand on the sleeping child. He bent over and placed a soft kiss on Harry's forehead, whispering, "Goodbye, Harry. I wish things were really different." He had hoped that his reluctance to let Harry go to Mazeroth would have made Layla reconsider her decision, but it seemed that she had made up her mind. Despite the weight of the truth about Edith's death, Michael remained silent as he bid farewell to Harry and Layla. He knew that revealing the truth would only cause more pain and heartache. Besides, Layla didn't ask any questions about Harry's abduction, showing that all she cared about was her son's safe return. "I will hold you accountable, Headmaster. If the Skyhall dares to play any games with them, I will show you why they call me the Dark Lord," Michael said with a deep, commanding voice. The sky darkened as his words echoed across the ocean, and bolts of lightning illuminated his face, highlighting the power emanating from him. The full moon blackened as if in deference to his might, and the wind picked up, blowing fiercely around him. Chapter 945. The debt of the previous Dark Lord. The sound of breaking glass echoed across the dark sky as Michael's meteorite spell cleared out the horde of Hellwalkers. As Gaia stood there in awe, she noticed that the castle was suddenly much closer than before. Michael quickly grabbed her by the waist, and with a swift movement, they both leaped into the air. The wind rushed past them as they soared towards the castle gates. As they approached the gates, Michael's eyes were fixed on the target, calculating their landing with precision. He angled his body and adjusted his speed, and just as they reached the ground, he landed with a light thud right before the castle gates. When Michael landed before the castle, Gaia's eyes widened in shock and horror at the sight before her. The castle of the ruler of hell was a massive, foreboding structure with black stone walls that reached up toward the dark, stormy sky. The gates were made of iron and adorned with twisted demonic faces, and the courtyard was filled with strange, otherworldly creatures. The air was thick with the stench of sulfur and brimstone, and the sound of screams echoed from within the castle's walls. The atmosphere was oppressive, almost suffocating, and Gaia felt like she was being swallowed up by darkness. The castle was surrounded by jagged peaks and a moat of boiling lava, adding to the foreboding atmosphere. In the distance, the skies were dark and foreboding, with black clouds swirling and lightning flashing in every direction. There was no sun or moon or natural light to guide one's way. Instead, the only light came from the flickering flames that rose up from the molten lava rivers that ran through the realm. The landscape was barren and desolate, devoid of any signs of life or beauty. The ground was rough and jagged, littered with sharp rocks and broken bones. As Gaia took in her surroundings, she couldn't help but feel a sense of despair and hopelessness wash over her. She could hear the distant sounds of screams and cries of agony, reminding her that she was in a place of eternal suffering. As they made their way towards the castle gates, she could see twisted demonic faces carved into the stone walls and strange, otherworldly creatures lurking in the shadows. The closer they got to the castle gates, the more Gaia felt like the darkness was closing in on her. She could see the twisted faces on the gates leering at her, and the air was thick with the stench of sulfur and brimstone. Gaia couldn't imagine how anyone could survive in a place like this. It was a place of unspeakable darkness and horror, ruled by an entity of unfathomable power and malice. And yet, they had to enter the castle and face the ruler of hell if they were to save Nightmare. As they stepped through the gates and into the castle, Gaia could feel the weight of the darkness pressing down on her. The walls were lined with skulls and bones of all shapes and sizes, arranged in twisted patterns. The floors were slick with blood and littered with the remains of the tortured souls who had met their gruesome fates within these walls. Despite the bone-chilling sight of the castle, Gaia found solace in the fact that she was with Michael, the god of darkness and her fiancé. Being by his side gave her an indescribable sense of comfort, even as they ventured deeper into the heart of hell. As Michael stepped onto the castle grounds, the wind picked up, sending chills down Gaia's spine. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and flashes of lightning illuminated the ominous sky, casting an eerie glow across the barren landscape. As they approached the towering steel doors of the castle, Gaia couldn't help but feel a sense of dread building within her. The doors were adorned with intricate carvings of skulls, bones, and disfigured bodies, all of which looked like they had been twisted and contorted into grotesque forms. The door's surface was cold to the touch, as if it had been forged from the very depths of hell itself. The floor was slick with blood and littered with the remains of what appeared to be tortured souls, and the air was thick with the scent of decay and brimstone. The flickering torches cast an eerie glow on the walls, making it seem as though the castle was alive with malevolent spirits. The walls were made of black stone, and the floors were slick with what appeared to be blood. Gaia could see strange, otherworldly creatures lurking in the shadows, their eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. The air was thick with the stench of sulfur and decay, and the only sounds that could be heard were the faint cries and screams of the damned. The flickering torches cast eerie shadows on the walls, and Gaia could feel the eyes of unseen beings following their every move. Despite the castle's foreboding appearance, Michael continued onward with unshakable resolve. Gaia held on to his arm tightly, taking comfort in his reassuring presence. As they navigated through the labyrinthine hallways, Gaia could feel her heart racing with every step they took. The darkness seemed to swallow them up as they moved deeper into the castle's depths. Gaia could feel the weight of the castle bearing down on her, as if it were trying to crush her very soul. The stench of decay grew stronger, and the sounds of suffering grew louder with every passing moment. Gaia could feel her resolve starting to falter as they approached the throne room, where the ruler of hell awaited them. But as she looked up at Michael's unwavering gaze, she felt renewed strength and determination. With Michael by her side, She knew that she could face whatever horrors awaited them in the depths of hell. As they made their way through the castle's corridors, Michael's eyes scanned their surroundings, taking in the macabre decor and the twisted artwork that adorned the walls. Gaia walked beside him, her hand gripping his tightly as she surveyed the gruesome surroundings with disgust. "I can't believe this is real," she muttered, glancing at Michael. "Is this hell?" Michael merely shrugged, his expression unreadable. "That's a good bet," he replied with eerie calmness in his voice. Gaia shook her head, her eyes scanning the twisted tapestries that adorned the walls. "I wonder what awaits us in this castle." "I have a bad feeling about this, Michael." Michael remained calm, his gaze fixed ahead as they made their way through the darkened halls. "Whatever or whoever it is, we will face them and get out of this place alive." "I had seen enough deaths for one day," he replied. As they approached the throne hall, Michael's pace quickened, his eyes fixed ahead. Gaia felt her heart race as they stepped through the doors, revealing the foreboding chamber beyond. "You're not scared at all, are you?" she asked softly, her eyes fixed on the twisted tapestries that adorned the walls. Gaia's voice trembled as she glanced around the twisted and gruesome surroundings. "This place is unnerving. The darkness, the lifeless bodies, and everything else. It's creeping me out," she murmured, her grip tightening around Michael's hand. "I sometimes wish I were the goddess of darkness like you, so that I could be as fearless as you." Michael merely smiled, his gaze fixed ahead as they made their way through the twisted throne room. Darkness can be a source of fear for many, but for those who embrace it, it can be a powerful tool. Fear is natural, but it's what we do in the face of that fear that defines us. I choose to use the darkness to my advantage, to harness its power and overcome my fears. In the end, it's not the darkness that we should fear, but our own inability to confront it. Finally, Michael arrived at the door to the throne hall and paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. Since he had begun to embrace the darkness within him fully, fear no longer held any power over him. Without hesitation, he pushed the door open and strode into the throne hall calmly and unwaveringly. The throne hall was a foreboding chamber filled with a pervading sense of darkness and malice. The walls were adorned with grotesque tapestries depicting scenes of torture and suffering, and the air was thick with the stench of sulfur and brimstone. In the center of the room stood a massive throne carved from blackened bones and adorned with the skulls of defeated enemies. The throne was surrounded by flickering torches, casting eerie shadows on the walls and illuminating the ruler of hell who sat upon it, a figure of immense power and malice. Dagon's voice rang out as Michael and Gaia finally strode into the throne hall. "Took you long enough," he said, his tone dripping with malice and impatience. When the words of Dagon echoed through the hall, Gaia caught sight of the ruler of hell. She couldn't help but feel a shiver run down her spine. He was an imposing figure, with jet-black skin, 3 blazing eyes, and a wicked grin that revealed rows of razor-sharp teeth. His 4 muscular arms hung by his side, each adorned with a different weapon, and a set of large wings sprouted from his back, twitching with excitement as he surveyed his guests. Sitting upon his throne, which was carved from blackened bones and adorned with the skulls of defeated enemies, the ruler of hell was the epitome of power and malice. His eyes burned with a fierce flame, reflecting the fires of the underworld, and his face was twisted in a wicked grin that sent shivers down Gaia's spine. Despite his formidable appearance, the ruler of hell remained calm and composed, his eyes fixed upon Michael as he approached. As Michael and Gaia approached, the ruler of hell rose from his throne, towering over them with his massive frame. He surveyed them with a predatory gleam in his eye, his nostrils flaring as he breathed in their scent. Gaia couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as the ruler of hell loomed over them. His presence was overwhelming and menacing. She knew that they were in the presence of a being of great power, and she could only hope that Michael was up to the challenge if things went south. Although Michael felt no fear in his heart, he couldn't help but feel a sense of surprise upon seeing the ruler of hell for the first time. If the devil that Michael had heard about in stories had a physical form, it would be the man who sat on the imposing throne before him. Gaia, who had always been fearless, even cowered behind Michael at the sight of the ruler. She tightly gripped Michael's shoulder as they watched the ruler of hell slowly descend the steps. Each step he took seemed to shake the very foundations of the castle, as if the ground beneath them was trembling in fear. As he approached them, Michael noticed that the ruler's eyes seemed to glow with an otherworldly light, and his presence was suffocating. As Michael and Gaia stood before the imposing figure of the ruler of hell, Dagon's deep voice reverberated through the throne hall. "Time does fly, huh?" he said, his tone almost playful. "It feels like only yesterday you stood there at the same place you are right now and proposed an alliance with the ruler of hell." Michael was taken aback, his mind racing as he tried to make sense of Dagon's words. "But 5,000 years have passed," Dagon continued, a hint of amusement in his voice. Michael was stunned. His previous self had reset the universe 5,000 years ago, and he had assumed that everyone had been affected. But Dagon seemed to be an exception. Michael searched for any sign of deceit in the ruler's eyes, but found none. "You are not affected?" Michael asked, his confusion evident in his voice. "We were allies and you made an exception, Michael." Michael's shock deepened as Dagon spoke his true name, a name that no one in the universe should have known. Michael's eyes widened as he realized that the ruler of hell had some knowledge that he should not possess. Gaia noticed the change in Michael's demeanor and squeezed his hand reassuringly, but Michael remained lost in thought, trying to piece together the puzzle before him. Only Gaia knew his true name, and Michael had gone to great lengths to keep it that way. His mind raced as he tried to figure out how Dagon had learned his name, but he could find no answers unless his previous self revealed his name to Dagon for some reason. "I have to give you credit, Michael. 5,000 years ago, you said you'd be here." Dagon spoke with a hint of amusement in his voice, his eyes fixed on Michael. His tone was both mysterious and playful, leaving Michael to wonder what else Dagon knew. Michael couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as he studied the ruler of hell. Despite his confidence, Michael knew that Dagon was not to be underestimated. "What else did I say?" Michael took a step forward, his eyes fixed on Dagon's face. Dagon's lips curved into a sly smile, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "That you will settle your debt to me." Chapter 946. The debt of the previous Dark Lord. Michael's expression turned grim as he heard Dagon mention the debt. He couldn't imagine what kind of deal his past self had made with the ruler of hell, but he knew it must have been something significant. Dagon, on the other hand, seemed amused by Michael's reaction. His eyes glinted with a mischievous light as he spoke, relishing in the god of darkness discomfort. Despite his discomfort, Michael remained calm, trying to assess the situation. He knew that if his past self had revealed his realm name to Dagon, there must have been a reason for it. Dagon's voice rang out across the throne hall, filling the space with a sinister, almost playful tone. "Let me sweeten the pot for you, Michael," he said, a wry smile playing across his lips. "If you help me, I will give back the soul of your recently departed friend." Michael and Gaia stood frozen, their eyes widening in shock and disbelief. For a moment, Michael couldn't believe what he was hearing. The idea of getting his friend's soul back was something he had never even dared to dream of. But the suddenness of Dagon's offer left him feeling uneasy. Gaia, too, was stunned by Dagon's words. Her heart raced as she stared at the ruler of hell, struggling to comprehend what was happening. The thought of seeing her dear little lizard Nightmare once more filled her with a mix of emotions: joy, hope, and fear. Michael and Gaia were both stunned at Dagon's words. Michael's heart raced with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Could it be possible that Nightmare's soul was trapped in hell all this time? And could they finally have the chance to get it back? Gaia's eyes widened in surprise, and her hand tightened on Michael's shoulder. The thought of Nightmare's soul being trapped in hell was horrifying, and the possibility of getting it back was both exciting and terrifying. They both looked at Dagon, waiting for him to elaborate on his offer. Gaia's heart was pounding as she struggled to comprehend what she had just heard. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice quavering with fear and hope. The thought of seeing her beloved pet Nightmare again filled her with a fierce longing. Dagon merely smirked, his eyes glinting with amusement. He snapped his fingers, and a ghostly figure of a small baby dragon appeared beside him. Michael felt his breath catch in his throat as he recognized the form. It was Nightmare, in his younger years. Michael couldn't believe his eyes. Nightmare, his loyal companion and friend, had been lost to him for what felt like an eternity. And now, the possibility of seeing him again, even in this spectral form, filled him with a mix of emotions. He felt a pang of guilt for not being able to save him before, but also a spark of hope that they might be able to bring him back. Dagon's face twisted into an evil smile as he clenched his fist. "Do what I ask of you, and you will get his soul back. Otherwise—" His voice trailed off ominously. Suddenly, a loud roar filled the throne room, a pained and agonized cry that seemed to come from the very depths of hell itself. Michael and Gaia watched in horror as they saw the ghostly form of Nightmare floating beside Dagon, his unconscious body racked with pain. Gaia's heart sank as she realized the true gravity of the situation. They had to help Dagon if they wanted to save their beloved friend. At the sound of Nightmare's cry, Michael's heart sank. The thought of his dear friend's soul being trapped in hell filled him with dread and panic. Without a second thought, he raised his hand in a gesture for Dagon to stop. "Stop," Michael said firmly, his eyes fixed on the ghostly form of Nightmare. As Gaia rushed towards Dagon to rescue Nightmare, Michael's heart sank with dread and panic. He knew that Dagon was not to be trifled with, and Gaia's impulsive action could have dire consequences. However, before he could intervene, a powerful gust of wind shot from Dagon's body, throwing both Michael and Gaia off their feet and pinning them against the wall. "What do you want?" Michael demanded, his voice strained as he struggled to catch his breath. Despite his natural inclination to rebel against anyone who tried to control him, Michael realized that he was in no position to challenge Dagon's authority. The realm of hell was an inhospitable place, and Dagon was the supreme ruler who held absolute power over it. Although the previous Dark Lord had the power to go against Dagon, Michael's current version was weak in front of him. Knowing that Dagon held the soul of Nightmare, Michael couldn't afford to provoke him. Gaia's failed attempt at rescuing the soul was a reminder of how powerless they were in hell. With a sense of dread and defeat, Michael growled, "Tell me what you want me to do." He didn't dare fight against Dagon in a realm where he held absolute power. Getting back Nightmare's soul was his priority, and he was willing to do whatever it took to get it back. It was a difficult pill to swallow, but Michael knew that he would do anything to get Nightmare's soul back. He glanced at Gaia, who was still recovering from the gust of wind that had sent her flying. He felt a surge of anger and frustration, but he knew that now was not the time to act on it. He needed to focus on the task at hand, whatever it might be. "How can I be sure that this is not some sort of trick?" Michael asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. Dagon raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement playing on his lips. "You have no reason to doubt me," he replied coolly. "And besides, what choice do you have but to believe me? If you want the soul of your dear friend back, you will do as I say." Michael's jaw clenched as he fought to control his anger. He knew that Dagon was right. He had no other choice but to trust him. Dagon's voice dripped with sinister amusement as he spoke. "Luckily for you, this task is right up your alley. You are known for your skill in killing, after all. I need you to eliminate someone for me." With a flick of his wrist, a holographic image appeared beside him, revealing a long-haired orc with a muscular build and a fierce expression. The orc's eyes seemed to glint with a hint of cruelty, and his armor was adorned with the bones of his enemies. "Go kill him and bring his head to me. Getting back Nightmare's soul is just as easy as this," Dagon said nonchalantly, his voice echoing through the throne room. With a flick of his wrist, the force that had been pinning Michael and Gaia against the wall dissipated, and they landed on the ground with a thud. Michael and Gaia exchanged a glance, both of them knowing that they had no other choice but to agree to Dagon's demands. Dagon turned his back to Michael and Gaia and began ascending the stairs leading to his throne, the echoes of his footsteps resonating through the silent chamber. As he climbed, he continued to speak in his nonchalant tone. "My minion will guide you to his last known location. You have 3 hours to complete the task," he said, his voice carrying a hint of warning. Michael opened his mouth to say something, but before he could even utter a word, a sudden force enveloped him and Gaia, and they were instantly teleported away from the throne hall. The world around them dissolved into nothingness before being replaced by a dark, twisted landscape. The suddenness of the teleportation caught them off guard, and they stumbled as they landed on the hard ground. As they regained their footing, Michael took a deep breath, steeling himself for the task ahead. As Michael and Gaia were searching for Dagon's minion, a loud buzzing sound caught their attention. They turned to see a giant mosquito hovering in front of them. The mosquito was at least 6 feet long and had a wingspan wider than Michael's outstretched arms. Its long, thin legs were covered in a dense layer of hair, and its bulbous eyes gleamed in the dim light of the realm of hell. Before Michael could react, Gaia, who was always quick to action, shot the mosquito down. "Wait, wait, wait!" The mosquito cried out in a whiny buzzing sound. "I am not your target. I'm here to guide you to it." Michael raised an eyebrow, surprised at the fact that a mosquito was capable of speech. "You're our guide?" he asked skeptically. The mosquito nodded frantically. Yes, yes, I swear on my proboscis. They'll show you the way, just don't squish me." "Sorry about that," Michael said, offering the mosquito a helping hand to get back in the air. "We're a bit on edge after what happened in the castle." I understand, the mosquito replied, still buzzing nervously. "But trust me, I'm on your side. I'm the best guide around here. Now, let's get going before any more mishaps happen." As Michael and Gaia followed the panicky mosquito through the hellish landscape, they couldn't help but drown in their own thoughts. The thought of having to kill someone weighed heavily on Michael's mind, while Gaia couldn't shake off the image of Nightmare's ghostly figure. Meanwhile, the mosquito continued to chatter on in a whiny voice, providing a commentary on the grotesque and macabre scenery around them. "Oh, look at that lovely sulfuric lake over there. Makes my wings itch just thinking about it," the mosquito exclaimed, sounding both panicked and amused. "Be careful of the acid pools," Buzz warned. "One touch and you'll be burned to a crisp. And watch out for the hell walkers. They're a nasty bunch. And whatever you do, don't step on the lava rocks. They're hotter than the sun." Michael and Gaia listened in silence, drowning in their own thoughts. Buzz's chattering was both funny and annoying at the same time, and they couldn't help but tune him out. However, every now and then, Buzz's panicked buzzing would snap them back to attention. Michael and Gaia could barely keep up with the mosquito's rapid chatter, but couldn't help but find its comical observations amusing. "And watch out for those fiery geysers. One wrong step and poof, you'll be roasted alive," the mosquito continued, flitting around their heads. Despite the absurdity of their situation, Michael and Gaia remained focused on their mission, determined to do whatever it takes to retrieve Nightmare's soul. But for the moment, they couldn't help but listen to the mosquito's ramblings and let out a few chuckles. "Are you even listening to me?" Buzz screeched, his wings buzzing furiously. "I'm trying to save your lives here," Michael sighed. "Yes, we're listening, Buzz, but can you give us a moment of silence to gather our thoughts?" "Silence? In hell?" Buzz cackled. "Good luck with that. But sure, go ahead, take all the time you need." Michael and Gaia exchanged a tired look as Buzz continued to chatter on. It was going to be a long journey. As they flew across the barren wasteland, Buzz pointed out various landmarks, such as the Lake of Fire, which he described as a great spot for swimming if you didn't mind being burned alive. Michael and Gaia couldn't help but shake their heads in amusement at Buzz's dark sense of humor. His buzzing voice was surprisingly entertaining, and his comical observations gave them a much-needed distraction from the horrors of hell. Though the weight of their task still hung heavy over them, the levity provided by Buzz's chatter allowed them to forget the danger that lay ahead momentarily. As Buzz continued to guide Michael and Gaia through the hellish landscape, his commentary had eased their worries and fears. However, his light-hearted tone suddenly took a dark turn when he brought up his ex-girlfriend. "You know that orc you're supposed to kill? I bet he stole my girlfriend," Buzz exclaimed, his buzzing voice filled with anger. Michael and Gaia exchanged a bewildered look, unsure how to respond to the mosquito's sudden outburst. "I mean, I may look like this, but I'm a killer at heart. I could take him down in a million ways, Buzz boasted, flexing his wings as if he were some sort of warrior. Michael couldn't help but chuckle at the sight of the tiny mosquito trying to act tough. Gaia, too, had a small smile on her face. As they flew over the landscape of hell, Buzz continued to vent his frustrations about his ex-girlfriend and her alleged affair with the orc. "That stupid orc is lucky Dagon sent you after him," he grumbled. "Otherwise, I would have taught him a lesson he wouldn't forget." Michael and Gaia exchanged a look but said nothing, not wanting to provoke Buzz any further. Buzz continued to ramble on about his plans to take down the orc, describing in hilarious detail the various methods he would use to kill him. "I would have stung him with my venomous tail and then buzzed around his head until he couldn't take it anymore," he exclaimed, his wings buzzing furiously with excitement. Gaia couldn't help but giggle at the absurdity of it all, while Michael simply shook his head and sighed. Even in the midst of their dangerous mission, Buzz's antics provided a much-needed moment of levity. Following Michael and Gaia followed Buzz's directions, they eventually reached a barren wasteland, with only occasional bursts of flames in the distance. The sky above them was a sickly shade of green, with lightning bolts crackling in the clouds. Buzz led them to a rocky outcrop, where Michael saw a dark cave in the distance, surrounded by an ominous aura. The wind howled around them, and Michael could feel the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. "Is that where we're headed?" Michael asked, his voice barely audible over the howling winds. Buzz pointed his long, thin leg towards the cave and exclaimed, "Yes, that's where the cheatin' orc resides, and I'm gonna make him pay for what he did to me and my girl." Michael and Gaia exchanged a skeptical glance as they looked at the giant mosquito in front of them. Gaia whispered to Michael, "Do you think he knows he's a mosquito and not a warrior?" But Buzz didn't seem to care about their doubts. He continued to boast about his fighting skills. "I'll take him down with one swift bite of my proboscis. Or maybe I'll use my powerful wings to create a gust and blow him away." Michael couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of the 6-foot-long mosquito attempting to take down an orc. "You know, Buzz, I think you're underestimating the orc's strength. He might not go down as easily as you think." But Buzz was too busy pumping himself up to listen. "Nonsense. I am Buzz, the mighty mosquito warrior. No orc can defeat me." As they approached the cave, Buzz's bravado started to waver. He began to buzz nervously. "Maybe we should wait outside and come up with a better plan. Or maybe we can just ask him nicely to give me back my girl." Gaia rolled her eyes and muttered under her breath, "Yeah, because that's definitely going to work." Michael sighed and turned to Buzz. "Listen, Buzz, we have a job to do. We need to get in there and take down the orc. Are you with us?" Buzz hesitated for a moment, his wings fluttering uncertainly. But then he straightened up, puffing out his chest. "Of course I'm with you. I'm Buzz, the fearless mosquito warrior. Let's go get that orc." Chapter 947. Devotee of Noah from another realm as a seasoned assassin, Michael knew the importance of thorough preparation before taking on a target. He would typically start by gathering intelligence on the target's habits, movements, and routines. This could involve scouting out their usual locations, monitoring their communications, and identifying their vulnerabilities. Once Michael had a clear understanding of his target, he would then carefully plan his approach. This would involve identifying the best time and location to strike, considering potential obstacles or hazards, and determining the most effective method for carrying out the assassination. Finally, Michael would ensure he had all the necessary equipment and resources at his disposal. This could include weapons, tools for disabling security measures, and escape routes. By taking these steps, Michael could increase his chances of success while minimizing the risk of being caught or discovered. Standing before the ominous cave, Michael assessed his options. Sneaking into the cave was one possibility, but it was risky because he had no idea what kind of traps or obstacles might be waiting for him inside. The other option was to lure the orc out into the open and confront him directly. Michael weighed the pros and cons of both options and ultimately decided that the latter was the safer choice. He could use his combat skills to defeat the orc in a fair fight rather than risking his life in a trap-filled cave. Michael couldn't understand why Dagon didn't come and kill the orc himself. He couldn't fathom the idea that the ruler of hell was weaker than the orc. However, he didn't have the luxury of pondering on this any further. Michael stood outside the cave, analyzing the situation before him. He decided to take action and raised his hand, channeling his dark energy. Suddenly, a bolt of black lightning shot from the tip of his finger, illuminating the area with its ominous glow. Buzz slowly flew backward, his 6-foot-long body trembling with fear. His bulbous eyes widened as he watched Michael unleash the bolt of lightning. Despite his tough talk earlier, Buzz was now realizing that he was way over his head. He covered himself with his wings and prayed for safety. After firing the lightning bolt, Michael tensed, waiting for the orc to appear. Sure enough, the ground began to shake and stir, and a moment later, the massive figure of the orc emerged from the depths of the cave. He was a towering figure with bulging muscles that rippled beneath his armor. His long hair was tied back in a loose knot, and his fierce eyes scanned the landscape. In one hand, he held a giant sword, which he dragged along the rocky ground behind him. Michael and Gaia remained calm before the orc, who seemed unperturbed by their presence. "I was wondering when you would come to take my life," the orc said calmly, as though he had been expecting them. Michael couldn't help but make a joke, pointing towards Buzz. "I heard you stole his girlfriend," he said with a smirk. At the mention of his girlfriend, Buzz's tiny heart skipped a beat. He felt a surge of anger and embarrassment, and for a moment he considered flying away from the area. But he knew that he couldn't abandon Michael and Gaia, not when they were so close to their goal. So instead, he buzzed around Michael's head, trying to make himself heard above the wind. The orc raised an eyebrow, looking from Michael to Buzz and back again. "I see," he said, his voice laced with amusement. "So you're here for revenge, little mosquito? Well, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. I don't have a girlfriend, stolen or otherwise." Buzz let out a high-pitched whine, clearly not believing the orc's words. "Don't listen to him. He's lying. I saw him with her myself." The orc's response was unexpected as he simply shrugged, and a wry smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Maybe I swatted her accidentally," he quipped, his tone betraying a hint of amusement. As they stood there facing the orc, Buzz flew over to Michael and whispered urgently in his ear, "How sure are you that you can take him down? I forgot to take my meds, and if you can give me enough time, I can fly back to the castle, take my meds, and come back to help you fight him." Michael shot Buzz a skeptical look, unsure if the mosquito was bluffing or not. However, he couldn't afford to take any chances, especially with Nightmare's soul on the line. "Well, be fine, Buzz. Just stay out of harm's way," he replied, hoping to reassure the jittery insect. Buzz nodded, his wings buzzing nervously, as Michael turned his attention back to the orc. The orc had crossed his arms and was regarding Michael and Gaia with a look of mild interest. Michael couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease at the orc's nonchalant attitude. Michael's voice was calm but firm as he addressed the orc. "Normally, I don't take anyone's life without knowing what they did, but in your case I have to make an exception. Dagon has someone I care about, and he wants your life as the price. So, do you have anything to tell us before we do this?" Michael carefully observed the orc, trying to gauge his cultivation level. But to his surprise, he couldn't get a read on the orc's strength. Despite this uncertainty, Michael remained confident in his abilities. His instincts had never failed him before, and they told him he could take down the orc. The orc broke the silence, his voice low and steady. "I only have one request," he said, holding out a silver pendant. "When you take my life, take this and give it to the bringer of light before you fight him." Michael's heart skipped a beat at the mention of the bringer of light. The memory of discovering the truth about his family still stung, and the name Noah was like a punch to the gut. Noah, the god of light and Michael's twin brother. He clenched his fist, feeling a wave of anger and sadness wash over him. The orc leveled his sword at Michael, proclaiming, "One day, the bringer of light shall emerge from the mortal realm and bring radiance to the darkened domain of the gods. He shall put an end to the heinous actions of the gods, starting with you." Michael was completely taken aback by the orc's words. He couldn't make sense of what the orc was saying, but one thing was certain, this orc was not from his world. The way he spoke of the realm of the gods was unlike anything Michael had ever heard before. It was as though the orc had lived in a completely different world, one that was beyond Michael's comprehension. So, you serve the god of light, Noah, and wish for him to kill me? Michael snickered, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. Well, thanks for telling me. Now, I can take your life without any hesitation or remorse, he continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm and contempt. Michael had no idea what kind of allegiance this orc had with Noah, but he couldn't let that distract him from his mission. The fate of Nightmare's soul hung in the balance, and he couldn't afford to be sidetracked by this orc's beliefs. As Michael raised his sword, the orc simply smirked, his eyes filled with a kind of resignation. He knew that his time had come and was ready to face his fate. May you never step into the realm of gods, the orc spat, his voice filled with venom. Take my life in an honorable duel, Dark Lord. The orc's challenge for an honorable duel didn't faze Michael, who calmly took a step back and prepared himself for the fight. He glanced over his shoulder at Gaia, who nodded in agreement with his decision. She had faith in Michael's abilities. After all, he had defeated Peter's Hell Walker form and had the power to topple kingdoms. Even though the orc emitted strange energy radiation around him, Gaia was confident that he posed no real threat to Michael. Michael raised his hand with a sense of purpose, and in response, his dark sword flew out of its sheath and landed squarely in his hand. He swung it around once to get a feel for its weight and balance, then pointed it towards the orc, taunting him to make the first move. The orc charged at Michael with his giant sword raised, determined to take him down. Michael dodged his attacks with ease, his movements graceful and precise. He countered with swift strikes of his own, his dark sword glinting in the dim light of the realm of hell. As the duel between the orc and Michael continued, sparks flew and the sound of clanging swords echoed through the wasteland. The orc was a fierce opponent, but Michael's skill and agility were unmatched. He could sense the orc's attacks before they even happened, and he effortlessly parried each strike with his dark sword. The duel seemed to go on for hours, but in reality, only a few seconds had passed since the battle began. Despite only a few seconds passing, Michael quickly learned that the orc was an exceptional swordsman. Michael's Sword of Destiny technique was renowned for its power and ability to defeat any swordsman, yet the orc managed to deflect Michael's attacks. Michael was surprised at the orc's swordsmanship skills, but what surprised him even more was the strength and durability of the orc's sword, which withstood the full force of the dark sword's attack. Although the orc deflected the dark sword without directly clashing with it, the dark sword still managed to chip away at the orc's sword, leaving a small mark on its surface. Unbeknownst to Michael, Noah had conducted an extensive study of the previous Dark Lord's abilities 5,000 years ago. He wrote his findings in a book and sent it to the realm of gods before the previous Dark Lord reset the universe. The orc that Michael was facing was one of the divine beings who had managed to acquire a few pages from this sacred book, which contained information about the Dark Lord's Sword of Destiny. With this knowledge, the orc had trained himself to become a formidable opponent for Michael, hoping to fulfill his duty to serve Noah and stop the atrocities of the gods. Michael had always appreciated a good sword fight as it helped him hone his skills. However, he had no time to spare today. He was running short on time and needed to end the fight quickly. As the orc aggressively attacked Michael, hoping to land at least one hit, Michael blocked the orc's sword with the dark sword. He then quickly raised his other hand and summoned a powerful wind blast, sending the orc flying backward. Michael's wind blast was so powerful that it sent the orc crashing into a nearby boulder, shattering it into pieces. The orc groaned in pain as he struggled to get back on his feet. Michael slowly walked towards the orc, sword in hand, ready to deliver the final blow. As Michael approached the orc, a thick aura of darkness began to emanate from him, causing the surrounding area to turn pitch black. The orc struggled to get back on his feet, but before he could fully stand up, Michael clenched his fist, and the darkness around the orc coalesced into an invisible hand that pushed the orc back to the ground, holding him in place. The orc strained against the grip of the darkness, but it was no use. Michael had complete control over the shadows. Many fear the darkness, but they forget that it is within the shadows where true power lies. Embrace the darkness, and you shall never fear the light again, Michael said. As the orc tried to break free from the darkness that enveloped him, Michael's eyes began to glow with a sinister black light. It was as if the darkness within him was manifesting itself in his eyes, ready to strike down any who dared oppose him. With a focused stare, Michael unleashed a barrage of dark energy beams that shot out from his eyes and struck the struggling orc with deadly precision, causing the ground beneath them to tremble. Chapter 948. Mugashuka's ultimatum. During Michael and Gaia's time in Hell, time moved differently. 1 hour in Hell was equivalent to a month in the real world. Thus, while only 6 hours had passed for them, 6 months had gone by in the outside world. During that time, much had changed, especially in the Guardian Guild. It had become divided into several factions, each vying for power, and the Alpha Guardians were struggling to maintain control and prevent the guild from falling apart. The once united front of the guild had shattered, and the members were now more focused on their personal goals and ambitions than the greater good of protecting the realm. Meanwhile, Big Bertha sailed fiercely under the wrathful sky, with the clouds thundering and the waves crashing against the sturdy ship. The wind howled with such intensity that it was almost deafening, as if nature itself was warning the crew of impending danger. The dark clouds cast a shadow over the ship, and flashes of lightning illuminated the restless sea. In the captain's cabin, the atmosphere was vastly different. It was a cozy and warm space, filled with rich wooden furnishings and soft candlelight. The walls were adorned with maps and charts depicting different areas of the sea, and a large desk was placed in the center of the room, piled high with books and scrolls. The captain's chair was made of leather and positioned so that the captain could look out of the window, which offered a breathtaking view of the tumultuous sea outside. The cabin was scented with the sweet aroma of spiced rum, and the gentle crackling of the fireplace added to the coziness of the space. Eve Voldegard stood sternly behind the grand table, her long black hair cascading down her back. She wore black armor that accentuated her warrior's arms, with only her hands exposed. Her armor had a black cape that fluttered behind her with the gusts of wind that rocked the ship. Despite her beauty, she exuded a commanding and intimidating aura, a testament to her strength and experience as a warrior. "How much longer until we reach our destination?" she asked in a collected tone, her eyes piercing through Corey, Gibson, and Saber, who were standing at the opposite end of the table. "This storm is delaying our journey, Lady Eve. If it persists, it may take us several more days to reach the island," Corey replied, his voice struggling to be heard above the thundering sounds of the storm. Eve's hand slammed onto the table, causing the entire cabin to tremble. "And what about your airships, Gibson? Can they withstand the storm and get us there any faster?" she demanded, her patience wearing thin. Gibson hesitated before answering. "I'm afraid not, my lady. Big Bertha is the only ship that can survive in these treacherous conditions." "Damn it!" Eve swore under her breath, slamming her fists on the table again, causing everyone in the cabin to tremble in fear. Everyone except Saber, who remained cool and collected. The storm outside raged on, mirroring the turmoil within Eve, who knew that time was running out for her. Eve's voice echoed through the captain's cabin as she reminded Corey, Gibson, and Saber of their mission's urgency. "We cannot afford any delays. Remember that we only have 3 weeks to retrieve the crystal for Mugashiku. If we fail, the consequences will be catastrophic. Our army and everything Ghost has built will be destroyed," she said, her voice quivering with fear. Eve had experienced the terror of Mugashiku firsthand, having ventured deep into the pit of the Stormville Mountain and catching a glimpse of the four-headed hydra that lurked there. As the memory of Mugashiku flooded Eve's mind, she shuddered with fear. The memory of the four-headed hydra was etched into her mind, each of its heads with glowing red eyes that seemed to bore into her soul. She remembered the deafening roar that shook the mountain and the feeling of dread that gripped her heart. As she spoke of Mugashiku, her voice trembled with fear, and her hands shook uncontrollably. To Eve, Mugashiku was the epitome of terror. The darkness in the pit cloaked his terrifying body, making it difficult to see him clearly. But the glowing pair of eyes in each head had burned an image in her mind that she could never forget. Mugashuka's size and strength had been overwhelming, and the mere thought of facing him again sent a chill down her spine. Eve was still haunted by the memory of being in close proximity to the abomination that was Mugashiku. The mere thought of the godly beast lying dormant beneath the southern continent and absorbing the arch-energy, resulting in the energy void that plagued the land, sent shivers down her spine. She was terrified that a monstrosity of that magnitude could exist in the same world as her. But what terrified her more was the knowledge that her best friend, Ghost, had struck a deal with this monstrosity. It was something only he would dare to do, and it left Eve wondering just how far he would go to achieve his goals. As she thought about Mugashiku, Eve couldn't help but shudder at the memory of the shocking scene where she was suddenly teleported into his lair. The overwhelming sense of fear had left her barely able to recall the conversation she had with the godly beast. All she could remember were fragments of the encounter, the blinding darkness that surrounded her, the glowing pair of eyes in each of Mugashuka's four heads, and the overwhelming feeling of being completely helpless in the face of such an immense and terrifying entity. Eve had been transported to the lair of Mugashiku without warning or explanation. She was surrounded by darkness, and the only light came from the glowing pair of eyes in each of the four heads of Mugashiku. The air was thick with tension, and Eve could feel Mugashuka's gaze boring into her. "You are the one called Eve," Mugashiku rumbled, his voice deep and ominous. Eve nodded, unable to find her voice. "I have a message for Ghost," Mugashiku continued. "He has failed to deliver the crystal to me in a timely manner. If it is not delivered to me on the island of Isendar within 3 weeks, I will destroy everything he has built and bring an end to this world." Eve felt her heart drop at Mugashuka's threat. She knew how important the crystal was to Ghost, and she knew that he would stop at nothing to protect it. She took a deep breath and tried to gather her courage. "What do you want?" she asked. Mugashiku turned his gaze to her, his eyes boring into her soul. "You can deliver the crystal to me yourself," he said. "I will give you a map of the island of Isendar. If you deliver the crystal to me within 3 weeks, I will spare Ghost and his world." Eve nodded, knowing she had no other choice. She took the map from Mugashiku and prepared to leave. "One more thing," Mugashiku said, his voice low and menacing. "If you fail to deliver the crystal to me, I will destroy everything you hold dear." Eve shuddered at the threat, knowing that Mugashiku was not one to make idle promises. She took a deep breath and prepared to face the daunting task ahead of her. Eve shook her head to clear her mind and snapped back to reality. Then she raised her hand towards a corner of the room. Suddenly, the room trembled slightly as a gust of wind picked up and her hammer flew through the air, landing firmly in her outstretched arm. The weapon was a sight to behold, with its black metal and silver engravings glistening in the dim light of the cabin. The center of the hammer was adorned with a skull that seemed to glare at anyone who dared to challenge Eve's might. As the hammer landed in her grasp, the room trembled slightly, emphasizing her immense strength. After creating a portal to his forge, Michael was short on time to forge Eve a new hammer. Instead, he made some adjustments to her current hammer and gave it as a gift to her through Azazel, while she was in seclusion. It was Michael who asked her to go into seclusion in the pocket dimension attached to Abyss in the Dark Forest. The reason being he knew that the Dark Army needed a leader other than him and Gaia, and as much as Michael knew about Azazel's strength, he believed that the demon butler was not fit to be a leader, whereas Eve was. Thus, Michael made the decision to send her into seclusion, where she recently broke through to the half-immortal stage. This achievement was made possible during the crisis of the Guardian Guild. It was a decision made by Michael, relying on his instincts, which ultimately saved the Dark Army from being without a leader when he and Gaia were teleported to the realm of Hell. With her hammer in hand, Eve made the decision to fly through the storm and reach the island of Isendar as quickly as possible. Saber offered to accompany her, but Eve declined. Eve's voice was firm and resolute as she spoke to Saber. The howling winds outside the cabin made her words almost inaudible, but the seriousness in her voice was unmistakable. Listen to me, Saber. I need you to head back to the castle and find a way to avenge Caius. If we let the Skyhall succeed in taking over Giselle and hang our people without retaliation, it will be a huge blow to our cause. I don't even want to imagine how Gaia would react to that news. Trust me, Gaia is like a raging storm when she's angry, and you don't want to be on the receiving end of that. The mere mention of Gaia's name was enough to strike fear in the hearts of many. She was known as the Dark Queen for a reason, and her ruthless nature was infamous throughout the land. Those who had crossed her or defied her orders lived to regret it, and some didn't even live at all. Despite the Dark Lord's fearsome reputation and the terror he struck into the hearts of his enemies, many believed that he could be reasoned with, that there was a flicker of humanity buried somewhere deep within him. However, when it came to the Dark Queen, no such sentiment existed. She was known to have committed ruthless acts, including killing her own father and breaking her sister's meridians without showing mercy. Her cruelty was unmatched, and those who had witnessed her wrath knew better than to cross her. She had a heart of ice, unyielding and unforgiving, and would stop at nothing to achieve her goals. After the War of Nagaland, even some in the Dark Army itself whispered that a dark force possessed her, as no human could possess such a level of darkness within them. In simple terms, when she was angry, it was like a storm descended upon them, and no one was safe from her wrath. Eve paused for a moment before continuing. I want you to work with Elidir to find a way to break through their barrier and make them pay for their crimes. Can I count on you to do this for us? Eve's words were like a call to arms, and Saber could sense the urgency in her tone. He nodded resolutely and replied, You can count on me, my lady. I won't let you down. Eve nodded at them, her eyes burning with determination as she left the room without giving any room for negotiation. Stepping outside the cabin, Eve was immediately hit with the full force of the storm. The wind howled around her and the rain pelted her armor, making it hard to see. But she had her mission in mind and wasn't about to let the storm stop her. With her powerful arms, she raised her hammer above her head and took to the sky. The wind whipped through her long black hair and cape as she soared through the storm, determined to reach the island of Isendar and complete her mission. Chapter 949. Crystal holding an ancient evil as Eve flew through the storm. The roaring winds and crashing waves seemed to bend to her will. Her black armor glistened with raindrops as she sliced through the tempestuous sky with graceful determination. The storm raged around her, lightning illuminating her path and thunder echoing her resolve. Increasing her speed, she left Big Bertha and its crew behind, her figure becoming smaller and smaller in their view. The ship rocked and swayed beneath the ferocity of the storm, while Eve soared above, unaffected by its chaos. The rain lashed against her face, mingling with the determination etched on her features. Her grip tightened around the handle of her hammer, the engraved skull at its center serving as a reminder of the darkness that coursed through her veins. Through the turbulent skies, Eve maintained a steadfast course, her eyes fixed on the distant horizon where Isendar awaited. She navigated the treacherous winds and surging currents, her movements fluid and precise, as if she had become one with the storm itself. Her journey through the tempest was a testament to her unwavering resolve and indomitable spirit. As Eve flew through the storm, leaving Big Bertha's ship behind, her presence radiated power and determination, leaving no doubt that she was on a mission that would decide the fate of the Dark Army. As Eve soared through the storm-ridden sky, her gaze remained fixed on the distant horizon. The relentless tempest roared around her, with lightning illuminating the darkened clouds and raging tornadoes swirling in a fearsome dance. As she drew closer to her destination, the silhouette of Isendar emerged from the chaotic backdrop. The island was veiled in an ominous shroud of crackling lightning bolts and tempestuous winds, making it appear like a fortress of elemental forces. The tumultuous weather that engulfed the island seemed to mirror the turbulence within Eve's own heart. Undeterred by the violent conditions, she pushed through the howling gusts and surging currents, navigating the treacherous airspace with an unwavering focus. The lightning crackled around her, illuminating her figure against the darkened sky, lending an aura of electrifying intensity to her presence. The tornadoes that encircled the island twisted and churned, their dark funnels reaching toward the heavens. They seemed like guardians of the forbidden realm, warning trespassers of the dangers that awaited within. Yet, Eve pressed on, undaunted by the elemental onslaught. As she approached Isendar, a surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins. The island's jagged cliffs and hidden caves beckoned her, promising both treacherous trials and unimaginable secrets. Lightning bolts continued to dance across the sky, highlighting the rugged terrain and accentuating the ominous atmosphere that surrounded the island. With every passing moment, Eve's determination grew stronger, and the storm's ferocity seemed to bend to her will. She had arrived at the precipice of destiny, ready to face the challenges that awaited her on the treacherous shores of Isendar. As Eve approached the island of Isendar, her gaze was drawn to a towering structure that stood defiantly amidst the chaos of the storm. It was a silver tower, gleaming with an otherworldly radiance, rising high into the tempestuous sky. Lightning crackled and arced across its surface, giving it an ethereal glow. At the pinnacle of the tower, a mesmerizing sight awaited Eve, a pulsating energy ball. It hovered above, emanating a brilliant, crackling aura that seemed to fuel the storm raging around the island. The ball surged with raw power, its electric tendrils reaching out like living lightning, casting an eerie illumination across the turbulent atmosphere. As Eve drew closer, she could feel the energy ball's magnetic pull, resonating with the depths of her being. It seemed to pulse with an intensity that matched the storm's ferocity, as if it were the very source of the tempest itself. The crackling energy danced and flickered, casting an otherworldly light that reflected in Eve's determined eyes. A mix of awe and unease swirled within her. She sensed that this energy ball held tremendous significance, its existence intricately intertwined with the island's storm-ridden nature. It felt like a nexus of power, a focal point where the raw forces of nature converged in an awe-inspiring display. Eve's mind raced with questions, contemplating the origins and purpose of this enigmatic energy ball. Could it be the catalyst for the chaotic weather that had engulfed the island? Or could it be something related to the crystal Mugishiku ordered her to bring him? Its crackling energy hinted at an untapped potential waiting to be harnessed or unleashed. As the wind whipped around her and the thunder roared in the distance, Eve knew that she had to uncover the secrets held within the silver tower and the pulsating energy ball atop it. It was a mission she accepted willingly, driven by a desire to unravel the mysteries of Isendar and bring order to the storm's unrelenting fury. With each step toward the tower, Eve could feel the energy ball's influence grow stronger, its pull drawing her closer to the heart of the storm. She steeled herself, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that her journey into the unknown would reveal truths that could reshape the very fabric of her world. Within the towering structure, a group of dwarves scurried about in a state of nervous agitation. The air was heavy with an atmosphere of urgency as they hurriedly moved through a dimly lit corridor beneath the tower. The hall exuded an aura of ancient mystery, with shadowy recesses and worn stone walls that seemed to bear the weight of countless years. Torchlight flickered along the corridor, casting dancing shadows that played upon the weathered tapestries and worn insignias adorning the walls. The air was thick with a mix of apprehension and determination, their hushed whispers filling the space as they carried out their tasks with meticulous precision. At the heart of this darkened hall stood a mesmerizing sight, a crystal of immense power, encased within an ethereal shroud of swirling black mist. Its luminescent glow permeated the chamber, casting an otherworldly light that illuminated the dwarves' hasty efforts. The crystal, a mesmerizing gem of untold significance, pulsed with an overwhelming intensity, radiating waves of potent energy. Its surface shimmered with intricate patterns, as if the very essence of power was etched into its core. The dwarves had ingeniously fashioned a complex contraption to harness the crystal's might, a testament to their craftsmanship and determination. Gears whirred and mechanisms clicked as the dwarves worked feverishly, their brows furrowed with concentration. Their hands moved swiftly, adjusting dials, connecting conduits, and aligning delicate components, all with the hope of unlocking the crystal's true potential. Each movement was accompanied by muttered incantations and the occasional spark of arcane energy. The atmosphere in the hall crackled with anticipation, mingled with a sense of trepidation. The dwarves understood the immense responsibility they carried, aware of the consequences should they fail in their endeavor. The fate of Isendar and the storm-ravaged island hung in the balance, their every action a vital step toward restoring equilibrium. As the dwarves persisted in their task, their determination burned bright, fueled by their deep-rooted knowledge of the crystal's significance. They were driven by a collective purpose, knowing that success would bring salvation to their homeland and quell the relentless storm that ravaged the land. In this chamber, within the embrace of the ancient tower, the dwarves strived tirelessly, driven by a combination of expertise, faith, and an unwavering belief in the power of their creation. Their work held the promise of redemption, an opportunity to restore balance and harness the incredible forces contained within the enigmatic crystal. Reeling from the devastating loss of their catastrophic weapon in Dalgarum, the dwarves found themselves in a desperate state. Driven by a burning desire for revenge against the elves, they were determined to construct a new weapon capable of obliterating their enemies, all without relying on Hammond's assistance. Unbeknownst to them, the true culprits behind the destruction of their weapon and port were none other than Noah and the Guardians, working covertly to prevent further bloodshed and chaos. Within the hushed halls of their underground forges, the dwarves toiled tirelessly, their brows furrowed with frustration and their hearts heavy with the weight of their recent defeat. The resounding echoes of their hammers and chisels reverberated through the cavernous chambers, a symphony of determination intermingled with a lingering sense of betrayal. In their minds, the elves were responsible for the annihilation of their weapon and the decimation of their once thriving port. Blinded by anger and fueled by a fierce sense of pride, the dwarves were yet to discover the truth. Their assailants were not their elven foes, but rather unexpected allies who sought to avert a catastrophe that would plunge the realms into deeper turmoil. Unaware of the Guardians' intervention, the dwarves harbored a deep-seated resentment, their minds consumed with visions of vengeance. Each swing of the hammer, each measured stroke of their craftsmanship, was an act of defiance, a fervent attempt to reclaim their honor and demonstrate their formidable prowess. Their forges burned bright with the fiery intensity of their determination. Streams of molten metal cascaded into intricate molds, taking on the shape of deadly weaponry. Sparks danced like ethereal fireflies, illuminating the sweat-soaked brows of the tireless artisans. The air was thick with the heady scent of heated metal, a testament to the arduous labor and unwavering resolve that filled the cavernous depths. Deep within the dimly lit chamber of the dwarves' underground stronghold, Thorgar Iron Fist, the resolute leader of the dwarven clan, stood with furrowed brows and clenched fists. Before him, his second-in-command, Urgil Stonebeard, attempted to reason with him, his voice laced with urgency and concern. Urgil's grizzled beard trembled as he pleaded, "Thorgar, we can't ignore the signs any longer. The violent storms, the energy surges, the radiation. It's costing us lives, and it won't stop. We must abandon this crystal experiment before it consumes us all." Thorgar's eyes blazed with a defiant fire, his voice tinged with a mix of anger and determination. Abandon our purpose? Our chance to bring destruction upon the Empress and her elven empire? Are you suggesting we cower in fear and surrender our vengeance? Urgil's weathered hands clenched into trembling fists as frustration filled his voice. No, Thorgar. I'm suggesting that we have underestimated the power of this crystal. It's beyond our comprehension, and it's tearing our very foundation apart. Our comrades have perished, sacrificed in the name of a cause that threatens to consume us all. Thorgar's face reddened with rage, his voice booming with defiance. Sacrifices are necessary. We will not back down now, not after everything we've endured. We will harness the power of this crystal, and the Empress will tremble before the might of our creation. Urgil's voice rose, matching the intensity of the storm outside. Thorgar, have you lost sight of what truly matters? Our clan is crumbling, our brethren lost to the ravages of this experiment. We cannot bear witness to any more tragedy. It's time to let go, for the sake of our survival. Thorgar's eyes narrowed, his voice a low growl. Survival means nothing without purpose. Urgil, we have been wronged, humiliated by the Empress and her kin. Our vengeance fuels us, and this crystal is our chance to exact retribution. I will not let fear dictate our path. Urgil's voice cracked with desperation. Fear? Thorgar, it's not fear that drives me. It's a concern for our people, for our very existence. We must abandon this reckless pursuit before it consumes us all. Thorgar's face contorted with a mixture of anger and sorrow. If you lack the will to see this through, Urgil, then step aside. I will lead our clan to glory, with or without you by my side. Urgil's voice softened, tinged with sadness. Thorgar, you are my kin, my brother in arms. I implore you to reconsider. Our clan's strength lies not in blind vengeance but in unity and resilience. Together we can weather any storm. Please, let us not sacrifice ourselves on the altar of our own pride. As the dwarves stumbled upon the crystal in the depths of the island, a foreboding mist enshrouded the entire land, casting an eerie darkness upon their surroundings. The black mist seemed to pulsate with a malevolent energy, whispering secrets and tempting them with unknown power. The crystal itself exuded an otherworldly aura, its surface crackling with sinister energy. Its deep, ominous glow seemed to penetrate the hearts of those who gazed upon it, filling them with a sense of unease and trepidation. It was a force far beyond the dwarves' understanding, a forbidden knowledge that tugged at their curiosity while simultaneously instilling a profound sense of dread. In the stillness of the night, some of the dwarves claimed to have heard a haunting voice, soft and ethereal, drifting through the shadows. It was the voice of a lady, sweet yet sorrowful, beseeching them to break the crystal and release themselves from its grip. Her words echoed in their minds, an echo of warning amidst the turmoil that surrounded them. But the allure of power and revenge held the majority of the dwarves captive, blinding them to the sinister nature of their experiment. They dismissed the voice as a mere figment of their imagination, believing that their triumph over the elves would overshadow any cost incurred. However, as time wore on and the storms grew more violent, doubts began to gnaw at the hearts of some of the dwarves. Whispers of the lattice voice lingered in their thoughts, and the weight of their comrades' lives lost to the crystal's radiation haunted their dreams. A lingering sense of evil permeated the very air they breathed, and the once defiant resolve started to crumble. Yet, despite the increasing turmoil and the pleas of reason from Urgil, Thorgar, consumed by vengeance and a desire for retribution, stood firm in his conviction. He would not be swayed by the ominous signs or the whispers of a lady in the night. The lure of power, the taste of victory, and the destruction of their elven adversaries fueled his determination, even as the island trembled under the weight of their recklessness. In the midst of this conflict, the fate of the dwarves hung in the balance, their future teetering on the precipice of a choice, whether to heed the warnings and break free from the crystal's grasp or to continue their relentless pursuit of revenge, risking the annihilation of their own kind in the process. The island, shrouded in darkness and enigmatic mist, held its breath, waiting to see which path the dwarves would ultimately choose. As Urgil and Thorgar engaged in a heated argument, their voices filled with frustration and anger, a sudden shift in the atmosphere seized their attention. The air grew heavy, suffused with a malevolent energy that crackled with intensity. Amidst their heated exchange, the crystal at the center of the chamber trembled, pulsating with an eerie glow. It seemed to come alive, resonating with a newfound power. The dwarves' voices faltered as they turned their gaze toward the crystal, their eyes widening with a mix of awe and trepidation. Then, from within the depths of the crystal, a furious roar echoed through the chamber, reverberating off the walls with an otherworldly intensity. The sound was both chilling and enchanting, a voice filled with wrath and authority. It was the voice of a devilish lady, her tone laced with a formidable power that demanded attention. "Break the crystal!" The very air seemed to tremble as her words echoed through the chamber, her voice reaching the depths of their souls. Her rage was palpable, a tempestuous force that swept through the dwarves, freezing them in place. The echoes of her fury filled their ears, drowning out their quarrel and imposing a deep silence upon the room. Urgil and Thorgar's eyes met, their dispute forgotten in the face of this unforeseen presence. Fear etched itself into their expressions as they struggled to comprehend the magnitude of the entity within the crystal. It was a stark reminder that they were tampering with forces far beyond their comprehension, playing with fire that threatened to consume them all. In that moment, the furious roar of the devilish lady shook the very foundations of their resolve, injecting a sense of foreboding and doubt into their hearts. The argument ceased, replaced by a collective sense of apprehension and a newfound respect for the perilous nature of their experiment. By the gods! Thorgar, did you hear that? The crystal. It spoke. Urgil trembled. It's that lattice voice again. Urgil, we cannot ignore this any longer. We are playing with forces far beyond our understanding. Thorgar, his eyes wide with a mix of terror and determination, voice from the crystal, growing more furious. You dare to defy me? You shall feel the wrath of your own creation. As the echoes of the lattice wrath slowly dissipated, the chamber was left in an unsettling silence. Urgil and Thorgar, once at odds, now shared a common understanding, a glimpse into the profound darkness that resided within the crystal. The path ahead seemed more perilous than ever before, and the weight of their choices hung heavy in the air, lingering as a reminder of the treacherous path they had chosen to tread. Thorgar, we must press on. We cannot let fear sway us from our purpose. We will control this power, and the Empress will pay for what she has done. Urgil said, his voice trembling. Can't you see, Urgil? The crystal is consuming us, corrupting our very souls. We must break free before it's too late. Thorgar's voice was filled with desperation. Break me, and unleash a power you cannot fathom. Chapter 950. Eve Voldegard's wrath as the resonating voice of the devilish lady echoed through the chamber. Urgil and Thorgar stood frozen in shock. Their faces turned pale, mirroring the fear that coursed through their veins. However, their astonishment quickly transformed into sheer terror as the entire tower quaked violently, rattling the very core of their being. The tremors intensified, but this time, it felt different, as if an external force was exerting its influence upon the tower. The walls groaned under the strain, and debris rained down from the ceiling, shattering on the stone floor. Urgil and Thorgar struggled to maintain their footing. Their voices were drowned out by the chaos unfolding around them. With every tremor, cracks spider-webbed across the walls, threatening to bring the tower crashing down upon them. What's happening? Thorgar's voice reverberated through the hall, drowned out by the chaos that engulfed the tower. The bewildered faces of the other dwarves mirrored his confusion, their eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. Urgil and Thorgar exchanged alarmed glances, their hearts pounding in their chests, desperate for answers. Thorgar's eyes darted around the room, searching for someone to provide insight into the situation. But before anyone could respond, a group of soaked and disheveled dwarves burst into the hall, their breaths ragged and their faces filled with fear. Their voices overlapped, creating a cacophony of panic. "We're under attack!" one of the dwarves shouted, his voice trembling with terror. Thorgar's brows furrowed, his grip on his hammer tightening. He needed more information. "By whom?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the hall. The dwarves exchanged anxious glances, struggling to comprehend the identity of their assailant. "It's a mysterious figure, wielding a powerful hammer," one dwarf finally managed to say, his voice filled with uncertainty. "She moves with unmatched speed and strength." Urgil's eyes widened, his mind racing to make sense of the chaos unfolding around them. "She tore through our defenses like a whirlwind," another dwarf added, his voice trembling. "Our barricades crumbled beneath her relentless assault." The tower shook once more, as if in response to the upheaval outside. Urgil and Thorgar exchanged a concerned glance, realizing the gravity of the situation. An unknown warrior had descended upon their island, and now their entire realm was under siege. Urgil and Thorgar stormed out of the tower without uttering a word, their determination evident in their resolute expressions. They knew they had to confront this mysterious assailant head-on and rally their fellow dwarves to defend their home. The stormy skies above mirrored the turmoil in their hearts as they braced themselves for the battle that awaited them. They would face this unknown warrior with unwavering courage, determined to protect their people and uncover the truth behind her relentless assault. As Urgil and Thorgar emerged from the tower, their eyes widened in astonishment at the scene unfolding before them. The island was a battleground, consumed by the raging storm and the ferocious clash of opposing forces. Their gaze was immediately drawn to the young woman soaring through the tempestuous sky. She possessed an otherworldly aura, her every movement a display of unrivaled power and grace. With her jet-black hair whipping in the wind and the gleaming hammer firmly gripped in her hand, she struck a formidable figure against the backdrop of swirling clouds and crackling lightning. The energy barrier that encased the island flickered and shimmered under the relentless assault. The young woman hammered away at its ethereal surface, her strikes resonating with raw power. Each blow reverberated through the air, causing the barrier to tremble under the strain of her unwavering determination. The island was a battleground, ravaged by the fury of the storm and illuminated by the flashes of lightning. Their defensive weapons, trebuchets, Wuxias, and cannons, stood as towering structures, waiting to unleash their destructive power. But their attention was immediately drawn to the figure soaring through the storm-filled sky. The half-immortal young woman wielded her hammer with breathtaking skill and ferocity. Her every movement was a testament to her incredible strength and agility. She shattered the incoming cannonballs with a mighty swing, sending their fragments flying in all directions. The air crackled with energy as she defied gravity, effortlessly navigating the tumultuous winds. Her attacks were relentless, hammer striking with precision and force, as she aimed to dismantle the energy barrier protecting the island. The Wuxias, dwarven-made war machines with multiple rocket-firing tubes mounted on a wooden frame, unleashed a barrage of projectiles toward her. But she weaved through the onslaught with astonishing grace, evading the explosions and countering with devastating blows of her own. The storm seemed to obey her will, bending to her command as she moved through the chaotic tempest. Eve's hammer became an extension of her will, a weapon of both destruction and protection. With every swing, she defied the laws of physics, intercepting cannonballs and fireballs hurtling towards her with uncanny precision. As the cannonballs approached, propelled by the force of the cannons, Eve anticipated their trajectory. With a swift motion, she brought her hammer crashing down, meeting the cannonballs head-on. The impact unleashed a shockwave, causing the projectiles to shatter into a spray of molten metal and smoke. The debris scattered harmlessly across the battlefield, unable to find their intended target. Similarly, the fireballs launched from the trebuchets arced through the air, trailing flames in their wake. Eve's keen eyes tracked their path, calculating their speed and angle. With a mighty swing of her hammer, she unleashed a concussive blast, sending shockwaves rippling through the air. The force disrupted the fireball's path, causing them to disintegrate into mere embers before they could reach their intended destination. The sight was awe-inspiring as Eve stood amidst the chaos, her hammer a blur of motion. Each swing sent ripples of energy through the air, creating a protective barrier around her. The intense heat and destructive force of the cannonballs and fireballs were absorbed by the swirling energy, leaving Eve unscathed. With each successful deflection, Eve's determination grew. She was unyielding in her pursuit to dismantle the barrier and claim victory for her cause. The sound of metal meeting metal echoed across the battlefield, a testament to the indomitable spirit and strength of the half-immortal warrior. Amidst the chaos of battle, the dwarves shouted in a tumultuous mix of anger, fear, and frustration. Their voices reverberated through the stormy air, blending with the thunderous booms of cannons and the crackling of energy barriers. "Fear not, my brethren. We shall not falter in the face of this unknown assailant." Urgil's voice rang out with a mix of apprehension and resolve, cutting through the chaotic air. The dwarves, their hearts pounding with adrenaline, exchanged anxious glances, their voices trembling with fear and confusion. "By the great forges! Who is she?" "And what brings her to our island?" one dwarf exclaimed, his voice laced with a mix of fear and shock. "Such raw power. It's like nothing I've ever witnessed before. How did she find us? What does she want?" Another dwarf questioned, his voice filled with disbelief and a hint of curiosity. "She's tearing apart our defenses like a vengeful storm. We cannot allow her to breach our walls." A third dwarf shouted, his voice strained with determination, the urgency in his words echoing through the ranks. A sense of injustice and anger swelled among the dwarves as they grappled with the inexplicable assault. "This is madness. We've done naught to deserve this wrath. Why does she unleash such fury upon us?" A dwarf cried out, his voice tinged with righteous indignation and confusion. Urgil, his mind racing with questions, raised his voice to rally his comrades amidst the chaos. "Stand firm, my brethren. We must defend our beloved island and uncover the truth behind this relentless assault. Find out who she is, why she seeks our destruction." Urgil's voice reverberated with urgency and a steadfast determination to protect their home. Thorgar, his gaze fixed upon the tempestuous onslaught from above, unleashed a growl of frustration. "Enough with the questions. Our barriers must hold. We will not yield an inch. Ready the cannons, increase the firepower." Thorgar's voice boomed with unwavering resolve, his tone laced with a fierce determination to repel the relentless onslaught. The air crackled with tension as the dwarves, their voices a blend of despair and determination, exchanged words amidst the raging storm. "We're doing everything we can, but she defies our every effort. Her power knows no bounds," a dwarf exclaimed, his voice tinged with a mix of awe and desperation. "Like an unstoppable tempest, she laughs at our feeble attempts to subdue her. Our weapons seem futile against her might." Another dwarf cried out, his voice filled with disbelief and a tinge of admiration for their mysterious adversary. The sounds of crashing waves and roaring winds intertwined with the echoes of their voices, a symphony of desperation and defiance. Urgil, his voice resolute and filled with unwavering determination, sought to embolden his comrades in the face of overwhelming odds. "Our resolve shall not waver. We stand united as warriors of the forge. Fight on, my brethren, for our island, for our honor." Urgil's voice rang out, carrying a mix of defiance and hope, fueling the dwarves' determination to withstand the storm and protect their cherished homeland. In the midst of chaos and uncertainty, their shouts and cries mingled with the relentless onslaught, forging an unbreakable spirit that resonated through the island as the dwarves bravely battled against the unyielding force that raged above them. As Thorgar's eyes blazed with determination, he bellowed a command to the dwarves, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Bring forth the mighty siege engines. Unleash our most potent weapons. It's time to show this interloper the might of our dwarven craftsmanship." Thorgar's voice echoed with authority and a burning desire for vengeance. Responding to their leader's call, the dwarves scrambled into action, their movements swift and purposeful. The ground beneath their feet rumbled and quaked as if awoken by their determination. From deep within the island's core, colossal structures emerged, rising like ancient guardians awakened from slumber. These were the fabled dwarven war machines, crafted with meticulous care and imbued with the raw power of the earth itself. One of the contraptions, known as the Etherclaw, a marvel of dwarven engineering, was an imposing aerial platform adorned with an array of rotating cannons and swirling propellers. As it gracefully maneuvered through the stormy sky, its sleek metallic frame glistened with an otherworldly glow. From its cannons, it unleashed a torrent of glowing projectiles known as skyblades, ethereal blades infused with arcane energies that streaked through the air with razor-sharp precision. Guided by intricate mechanisms, the Etherclaw's Skyseeker missiles soared with celestial energy, leaving trails of stardust in their wake. With the pulsating Stormcaller at its core, the Etherclaw harnessed the very essence of thunderstorms, releasing concentrated bursts of lightning that arced across the heavens. This awe-inspiring dwarven creation was a symbol of power and ingenuity, an airborne force capable of defending the skies with unrivaled might. Next, the The Goliath cannon, a behemoth of metal and steam, emerged from the depths. It stood as tall as a mountain, its barrel gleaming with runes of power. As the dwarves loaded it with specially crafted explosive projectiles, the Goliath cannon emitted a deep rumble, gathering energy within its core. With a thunderous roar, it launched its payload high into the stormy sky, unleashing a cataclysmic explosion that shattered the air and sent shockwaves rippling through the tempest. Completing this formidable defense line, the ironclad ballistae emerged, massive crossbows mounted on sturdy iron frames. These colossal weapons could hurl massive bolts forged with enchanted steel with pinpoint accuracy. As the dwarves took aim, the ironclad ballistae released their projectiles, which pierced the raging storm like deadly arrows, seeking out their target with unerring precision. Together, these legendary dwarven creations symbolized the resilience and ingenuity of their kind. As the newly revealed defenses took their positions, the ground beneath them shook with the weight of their power, and a surge of confidence coursed through the ranks of the dwarves. They stood tall, their hearts brimming with determination, ready to face the unknown adversary who dared to challenge them. With the resounding clash of gears and the crackling of arcane energies, the dwarven war machines unleashed their mighty arsenal upon the sky, their devastating power rivaling the storm's fury. The island trembled as lightning clashed with lightning, and the dwarves' battle cries melded with the roar of machinery, creating a symphony of defiance that echoed across the turbulent skies. In this pivotal moment, the dwarves showcased the pinnacle of their engineering prowess and harnessed the forces of nature to defend their homeland. With their newfound weapons of destruction, they vowed to stand strong and repel any threat that dared to encroach upon their domain. As the tumultuous battle raged on, a momentary lull fell upon the chaotic scene. Eve, suspended in midair with her hammer in hand, radiated an aura of commanding authority. The raging storm seemed to bow to her presence as her voice cut through the tempestuous winds, resonating with otherworldly power. Dwarves of Isendar, your struggle is in vain. Her voice boomed, echoing across the stormy sky. Surrender now and spare yourselves from the wrath of the Dark Lord. Your feeble attempts to defy him will only bring destruction upon your heads. Her words hung in the air, carrying an undeniable weight. The dwarves paused, their gazes fixed upon the formidable figure suspended above them. The power in Eve's voice was undeniable, and even amidst the chaos, her words struck a chord of fear and uncertainty in their hearts. But the dwarves, fueled by their pride and determination, refused to yield. Their resolve surged as they defiantly raised their weapons, ready to face whatever awaited them. The challenge was clear. They would not back down, for their homeland and their honor were at stake. Eve's voice faded into the roaring storm, leaving the dwarves to brace themselves for the impending clash, their hearts filled with a mixture of apprehension and unwavering courage. As Eve gazed upon the determined dwarves, a pang of sympathy tugged at her heart. She knew the futility of their resistance, and deep down, she wished they had chosen a different path. But she also understood their unwavering pride and the dire consequences they would face if they surrendered. With a heavy sigh, Eve cast aside her internal conflict and prepared to fight with all her might. She summoned the primal forces of lightning and storm, channeling their raw energy through her being. Bolts of crackling lightning danced along her fingertips as the atmosphere around her grew charged with electricity. In an awe-inspiring display, Eve unleashed her first spell, Thunder's Fury. With a resounding clap of thunder, the sky split open as jagged bolts of lightning cascaded down from above. The electrifying tempest engulfed the battlefield, striking the ground with ferocious intensity. The very air crackled with electricity, and the dwarves found themselves amidst a storm of devastating power. Undeterred, Eve's next spell, Stormcaller's Wrath, summoned dark clouds that churned ominously above. A vortex of wind and rain spiraled around her, growing in intensity with each passing moment. Then, with a single command, a cyclone of gale-force winds swept across the island, uprooting trees and scattering debris in its wake. Rain poured in torrents, transforming the once calm sea into a tumultuous tempest. The sky became a canvas for Eve's spellcraft as she weaved a tapestry of lightning and storm. Her mastery over these elements knew no bounds as she conjured massive bolts of lightning that streaked across the sky, illuminating the darkened clouds with their dazzling brilliance. Each strike sent shockwaves reverberating through the atmosphere, unleashing a symphony of thunderous booms. The effects of Eve's spells were cataclysmic. The sky crackled with the sheer force of her lightning, and the weather itself became her weapon. The island trembled beneath the onslaught, and the once raging storm seemed to pale in comparison to the tempest she had unleashed. With each spell, Eve's determination grew, fueled by the ferocity of the storm she had summoned. She fought not only for herself but for the dwarves as well, hoping that they would soon realize the futility of their resistance and yield to the overwhelming power she commanded.